Chapter 325. Luonan was running in front, breathing smoothly. Cragburst was tearing apart a certain scoundrel who had taught him how to transfer. The two were connected through the hexa ear, but Cragburst howled in his excitement. You said transferring is the only way to be safe. What's going on now? Virus? Is the Martial Empress so bored that she planted a virus in her balls? Oh right, she doesn't have any balls. The latter half of his voice was very low, but it soon rose up again. You don't know? I listened to your fucking introduction and used your transcoder to transfer the files. Huh. Of course it's yours. Why would I use it for anything else? F***CK. You're wailing. Cragburst grinned as he spoke, reversing his mood. Oh my. I heard about your super high-end super high-capacity archive. It turned to ashes just like that? That's quite a pity. Cragburst ended the communication with a big laugh. He felt that he finally had someone to take with him, even though the person was a bit thinner. He impatiently explained to Luonan. It's that bastard bamboo pole. He's really hurt himself this time. He reaped what he sowed. Luonan didn't have that kind of agitated experience. He wasn't a veteran like Cragburst or Bamboo Pole. He just followed along and asked, Isn't it troublesome to transfer from the psychic wave network to the internet? I heard so, but it's fine as long as we know how to use the tools. Bamboo Pole wrote a few small programs that are quite easy to use. Of course, he's screwed this time. Is it a simple information transfer? Or is it an interference and coupling between the mental and material planes? Don't. Let's not talk about this. You can just ask Bamboo Pole later. Cragburst immediately called for a stop. He wasn't interested in pure theory at all, especially with Luonan's fierce reputation. If Luonan really got up early in the morning, it was as if he had drunk 3 liters of alcohol. His day would be wasted. Cragburst admitted defeat, but Luonan was a bit regretful. Right now he was very interested in all phenomena and theories that could involve format conversion, interference coupling, and so on. His breakthrough 2 days ago had opened a door to him. The door was full of treasures, but there were far too many treasures. He hadn't completely sorted them out yet. He needed to continue working hard. Luonan's morning running exercise had just begun. He thought for a bit and changed the topic. I still haven't thanked you. Cragburst waved his hand. How could that be? This sort of mission is easy and convenient, and you get points too. Only your secretary would be so considerate in arranging it. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the analysis of winning and losing factors, and the mentality of facing the enemy. What you told me was really useful, and helped me a lot. Let's talk about some experience. If we can use it, it means that we have a tacit understanding. Cragburst rubbed his big bald head. He was quite proud of himself. He gave Luonan another thumbs up. You were able to find a concept that suits you so quickly. You're quite amazing. Oh right, I heard from Zhang Yingying that it's called coupling? To be precise, it's formatting theory. Coupling is a type of application. It turns theory into reality. Luonan knew that Cragburst didn't want to listen to theory, so he didn't say too much. According to Cragburst's suggestion, one must have an unshakable conviction when facing a powerful enemy. That conviction must be established upon one's most irreplaceable advantage. Luonan didn't hesitate too much. He chose formatting theory. Only a complete set of laws and rules established upon the foundation of formatting theory could be an irreplaceable element fused into his bloodline. It was formatting theory that brought him inconceivable experiences. It presented the marvels of the dark side of the world to him. It allowed him to know what others didn't know. It allowed him to see what others didn't see. It also gave him the authority of certain laws and rules. And what was even more fortunate was that he was able to comprehend his mother's coupling theory in time. He borrowed the heart lantern of the eye's orifice that Xiaoshinyu had taught him to put the capital of formatting theory into practice. He could completely use a lofty tone to speak to an ability user like Black Beetle like that. You can't see what I can see. You don't know what I know. You can't compare to what I can control. You can't reach where I'm at. Frankly speaking, this feeling wasn't bad. Luonan grinned and laughed. The temperature flowing through his veins seemed to increase somewhat. On the other side, Cragburst pondered for a bit. He grunted twice and then opened his mouth to speak. It's obviously good to be able to find a conviction. However, it's not enough to just look at victory. You have to look at defeat. There's no one in this world who can win forever and never lose. It's said that President Ouyang was beaten to the point of questioning life when he was young. When that time comes, it will be time for you to be tested. Luo Nan turned his head to glance at him and nodded. I'm prepared. A bit of mental preparation is absolutely not enough. Crag Burst gave a piece of advice, as someone with experience. It's hard for even the calmest person to thoroughly discover their own flaws during victory. But after a crushing defeat, mistakes will be magnified. It's far too hard to maintain a normal state of mind. Therefore, it needs to be tough. It needs to be quenched and polished over and over again. In the end, the existing structure needs to be completely smashed to pieces. Only then can a good piece of steel be refined. The most taboo thing is to sway left and right. It's self-denial. I know what you mean. Luo Nan continued to smile. The warm breath he exhaled from his mouth and nose was as smooth and long as before. But don't worry, I have no other choice. The blow of failure had arrived a long time ago. The current situation of the 3 generations of the Luo family was the clearest manifestation of this. But since his grandfather, mother, and perhaps even his father, all of his flesh and blood had poured their blood and sweat into formatting theory, Luo Nan was destined to be the driver and reviser of formatting theory before it crashed, even if it appeared to be a sports car that had gone out of control at high speeds. Therefore, Luo Nan didn't have the powerful conviction to use formatting theory to defeat all-powerful enemies. He only had the resolve to live with it and die with it. Luckily, the road ahead was still marked by coupling and the existence of gear. There was still light. There was still hope. Luo Nan originally wanted to say something after his smile faded, but he didn't say anything in the end. His feet didn't stop. He raised his head to look ahead. The morning light gradually revealed itself behind the flower walls of the courtyard in the residential area. Even though there were layers upon layers of high-rise buildings, the clear outline of the sky was reflected. He could see everything clearly. Luo Nan jogged a few laps with Crag Burst before returning home. Even though today was Sunday, everyone in the family had their own plans. They didn't wake up too late. Even Mo Peng yawned as he lay on the living room sofa, playing games to pass the time. He didn't see Luo Nan enter the house. His uncle Mo Haihang was busy in the kitchen. He would insist on cooking whenever he had the time to prevent the entire family from suffering from the torment of the AI housekeeper or his aunt. As for his aunt, Mrs. Luo Shuqing, she just laid out the tableware and occasionally directed the AI housekeeper to tidy up the house. Luo Nan greeted her and went upstairs to wash up. Luo Shuqing just nodded. She didn't say much. It was hard to describe the cheerfulness between her brows. She glanced at Mo Peng playing games in the next moment and spoke in a cold voice. Come over and help. Mo Peng raised his head in shock, but he didn't dare to let out a fart when he saw his mother's face. He tossed away the handheld terminal and walked over to act like an obedient child. The atmosphere in the house was a bit oppressive. It was like this all the way until mealtime. It was no wonder that such a situation occurred. Yesterday was Saturday. The family went to the sanatorium to visit their grandfather, Luo Yuandao. But it was different from last time. They practically didn't have the chance to have direct contact with Luo Yuandao. According to the sanatorium, the degenerative symptoms of the old man's central nervous system were becoming more and more severe. It further deepened the condition of his schizophrenia, causing his mood to be very unstable. Moreover, it was still worsening. If this continued, his mind and body would probably quickly collapse. There would be no possibility of saving him. Even though this was a result that could be predicted long ago, it was still hard for people to accept when it actually happened. Luo Shuqing was the only relative who was allowed to visit for a short period of time yesterday. Her mood entered an extremely downcast state after she personally witnessed her father's various conditions. Her mood didn't improve by much after a night. Because of this, the dining table was strangely silent during breakfast time. Luo Nan buried his head in eating. Thin slices of beef were paired with millet porridge. A dozen or so slices of meat were directly pressed into the bowl of porridge. The porridge was thick and scalding, and it was wrapped in the fragrance of meat. It went very well with the rice. He used the largest bowl in the family. His progress was also the fastest. It didn't even take 10 minutes for him to finish his third bowl. Don't drink hot food. It's hot and you'll get sick. Luo Xuqing only ate a shallow layer of porridge in her bowl. She didn't have any appetite. She just watched the others eat. In the end, she stared at Luo Nan and opened her mouth to admonish him. Luo Nan just grunted and continued to bury his head. He slurped the golden millet porridge into his mouth, eating boldly and confidently. His appetite had always been astonishing. After following Gym Master Xiao to cultivate in the eye's orifice, his appetite had increased. Luo Nan wasn't indifferent to his grandfather's worsening condition. However, the experiences of the past few days, especially when he was swaying back and forth on the edge of life and death, caused a different feeling to linger in his heart. There were actually many attitudes one could have when facing the pain of one's loved ones. Sorrow was a common and helpless action in the secular world, but it might not be suitable for him. Luo Xuqing didn't get angry when she saw her nephew bury his head and eat. She just asked her husband, "Did Nan gain some weight?" Mo Haiheng could guess that his wife had sensed that something was wrong with her mood. She was trying to adjust herself, so he grunted and said, "Old Mo, give me a number. What's Luo Nan's weight?" Old Mo was the AI housekeeper. He grasped the body data and health index of the entire family. He immediately responded with a magnetic baritone voice. Mr. Luo Nan's weight was measured at 52.6 kilograms on October 28th. His BMI is 18.8. That's fine. Mo Haiheng nodded at Luo Nan. You've put on a bit more weight recently. Your complexion looks better, though it's still on the light side. Luo Xuqing felt a bit gratified. Her lips curved into a smile. It looks like practicing martial arts was the right choice to stay in the hospital for a long time. I'll let the chubby kid go later. Mo Peng had been shot while eating. He immediately opened his eyes wide with an innocent expression. Luo Nan swallowed the piece of meat in his mouth and helped him out of this predicament. Gym Master Xiao is about to move. The dojo will be temporarily closed for business. Luo Xuqing furrowed her brows. Then what are you going to do? I don't go much. I just need to give some pointers occasionally. They only accepted me because of Leicester. This can't happen again. 2 days ago, Xie Junping wanted to join in on the fun, but he was rejected. Luo Nan didn't speak a single word of falsehood. At most, it was a bit exaggerated. Luo Xuqing stared at Mo Peng with a face full of disdain. You found a dozen excuses when I asked you to spar with me. Now you don't have a chance. Look at that belly of yours. The Mo family and the Luo family don't have anyone with a body like yours. Mo Peng was suddenly questioned about the purity of his bloodline. He was drunk. He couldn't help retorting, I'm still in my puberty period, okay? How am I supposed to grow taller if I'm skinny? Let's not talk about anything else. If I'm shorter than Emoya in the future, am I supposed to blame you guys for being biased? Emoya. Luo Xuqing suddenly laughed. You're talking about that unfilial girl who ran away from home? You don't need to worry. I'll break her legs when she gets back. Chapter 326. Madame Luo Xuqing unleashed her feudal aura when talking about Emoya. She was decisive and decisive. As the head of the family, Mo Haiyang coughed. Don't go overboard. Luo Xuqing tilted her head and stared at her husband. Overboard? Her little brother has been hospitalized several times, and her grandfather's condition has worsened. She's been away from home for nearly a month, and she hasn't called once a week. Her entire mind is on that band. Who's the one overboard? Luo Nan and Mo Peng glanced at each other. They buried their heads in their food. Of course, they couldn't tell their aunt or mother that Emoya had rushed back to see Luo Nan the second time he was admitted to the hospital. She just hid it from a certain someone. Yes, Mo Haiheng knew about it. He even covered for her. But right now he still had a calm expression. It was quite admirable. Mo Peng saw that his father was acting beautifully, and his brain heated up. He blurted, She'll be back in a week. You can teach her a lesson when the time comes. Who's wrong? Is there anyone who curses their sister like that? Luo Xuqing shot him a cold glance. She seemed to be shifting her anger. Mo Peng stepped on a landmine. He buried his head back down with a face of grief and indignation. Luo Nan had been burying his head in his food the entire time. But he was distracted by the topic of Emoya. Luo Xuqing was worried. He was worried as well. But they were worried in different directions. They were in troubled times. Even with the support of the Xia City branch, it was hard to take care of the entire family. Not to mention that Emoya was hundreds of kilometers away in a border town. In terms of worry, he was even more worried than his aunt. Nan, what are your plans for today? Luo Xuqing wanted to ease the atmosphere. She no longer clung to her son, and turned to ask Luo Nan, bringing him back to reality. Luo Nan answered honestly, I need to go to the maintenance center in the West City. I accidentally broke one of Gym Master Xiu's things a few days ago at the Daoguan. I need to go get it fixed. Luo Xuqing was a bit surprised. West City? That's quite far. Should I take you there? No need. I've already booked a car. It'll be there after dinner. Luo Nan quickly finished eating. He tidied up a bit and ran out. The car he booked was Kragburst's military off-road vehicle. It was parked outside the residential area, and had been waiting for a long time. Kragburst's original off-road vehicle had already been destroyed on the recycling stratum. This was a newly purchased one, and it looked even more domineering. Luo Nan sat in the front passenger seat and adjusted his posture. The car was a military-style car, so the seat was a bit hard, but it was truly spacious. With his height, he could practically stretch his legs in the seat. TSK, how much is this car? About 2 million. Kragburst started up the car and ran over the road like a tank. Not long after, he cut into the high-speed magnetic track and continued to accelerate. Luo Nan used to be the least concerned about this sort of thing, but right now he was very envious. Tycoon! Are all ability users easy to earn money? Why can't I find a way? Kragburst laughed. You're still thinking about 60 million? Didn't the secretary say she would help you find one? I can't always trouble her. Luo Nan's two palms fiercely pressed against his temples. He propped up his elbows, half stretching, half venting. He had hardly ever worried about money before. After all, he was the only son of the Luo family. His parents had invested in his education and living funds when he was born. He had a fixed amount of credits to spend every month. Add the doting of his aunt and uncle, and Emoya's financial support, and he was barely able to support himself, even when he was conducting pharmaceutical research. But if he wanted to purchase the mutant devil ray in the crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the large sum of 60 million far exceeded his level of living. If he was still that stuffy research student and followed the prescribed routine, it wouldn't be easy for him to earn this much money in his lifetime. And now, he heard that the Yao family couldn't stand the destruction the devil ray was causing to the ecosystem within the crystal pillar. They were constantly contacting the next family. Perhaps the price would drop if he dragged it out for a bit longer. But it wouldn't mean much to Luo Nan. The most important thing was that he didn't have enough time. Oh my, I get annoyed just thinking about money. Luo Nan sighed. He only had this sort of opportunity to vent his frustrations in front of someone he was familiar with, like Kragburst. Kragburst curled his lips. Your appetite is too big. Money doesn't just fall from the sky. If you really can't do it, I'll sponsor you a few million later. I'll make up for the difference or something. We're in a society of credit. Who would have so much spare money? Luo Nan leaned against the back of his seat. He cupped his hands weakly. Thanks. But I'd rather you introduce me to a way to make money. I have no clue at all. Where did you find it before? Rin Bufa of the society. I've looked for both official and private matters. It's all points and resources. I've never seen cash. There are points to exchange, but the market price of one honor point is 1 million. It's like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. Zhang Yingying paper cut, and the others all urged me not to trade. Of course you can't trade. Kragburst slapped the steering wheel. The society's pricing hasn't changed in 30 years. You know, it's purely used to scam people. If you want to trade, you should go to the black market. Pooh. Don't go to the black market either. There are countless scammers there. Many of them are set up by the bastards of headquarters to specifically sweep points. Luonan grunted. They said the same thing. Honor points are very important. Right now the society's circle has formed a very closed-off rare and precious resource trading platform. It's either barter or use honor points as money. Nothing else matters. Cragburst was still worried that Luonan didn't know the depth of things, and that he would run headfirst into it, and be countered by others. Cragburst put in more effort to explain. In my opinion, this is the biggest reason why the society is able to last until today. Look at how the society has caused the heavens to be angry, and the people to be resentful. Especially headquarters. But the majority of people are still here. There are still large groups of people who are sharpening their brains to get in. Why? Isn't it because of this resource trading platform? It's whetting everyone's appetite. You can't see it right now, but when you go deeper into cultivation, you'll need maintenance, treatment, and advancement. Large amounts of points will be casually thrown out. One mistake, and your progress will stagnate for several years. Luonan nodded, then shook his head. He laughed bitterly. Right now I just want to make money. Make a lot of money. Cragburst grinned. So you're looking in the wrong direction. The society's trading platform has already formed a closed-off circle. The money of the secular society isn't worth a fart. If you really want to make money, and you want to rely on your extraordinary abilities to make money, then you need to find those circles that are neither close nor distant from us. Neither close nor distant. In other words, those who know of the existence of the inner world, but don't possess the relevant abilities themselves. They hope to hire ability users to do a few special things. Individuals, financial groups, military and political powers, and so on. Cragburst turned his head to look at Luonan's face a few times when he spoke up to this point. He had a rare hesitation. This circle is half black and half white. Perhaps it's too early for you to make contact with it. What's too early? It's too late to make money right now. Oh, hold on. Using ability users. You mean, to do some illegal things? Luonan came to a realization. Cragburst shrugged. It's half and half. It depends on luck. Then, I'll go try my luck. Fine. In any case, with your current ability, it's just a matter of time before you make contact with these people. I'll take you on a trip later. This circle is mainly concentrated in a few private clubs. Most of the transactions are done face-to-face. Only after you get familiar with them can you take up work online and negotiate prices. Cragburst gave Luonan some relevant information, but he only spoke in general terms. Luonan could only understand the specific content after he made contact with them. Today was certainly not the day. Luonan's main mission right now was to repair the central mechanical device of the Tai Chi ball. Luonan and Cragburst used an hour's drive to arrive at an electronic equipment shopping center, located in the western district of the city. It was called Crossover. This Crossover Electronic City was a good place to ask Papercut for advice. There were over 10,000 stores of various sizes inside, and it was integrated with a large 24-hour repair service center. It was also the largest professional DIY exchange community in Xia City. Luonan and Cragburst arrived at around 9:30 in the morning. The electronic city was already crowded with people. Hundreds and thousands of unmanned devices crisscrossed in the dedicated tunnels above each floor. It was a bustling scene. Their destination was none other than the large 24-hour repair service center. Luonan followed the process and handed over the mechanical parts that needed to be repaired, the reservation number, and so on to the registration desk. Maintenance workers were assigned, and they followed the hovering ball to the corresponding workstation. They saw the pretty maintenance consultant and waited. The hardware facilities of the repair center were extremely excellent. Even the waiting area was arranged in an extremely comfortable and luxurious manner. There was also a surveillance video that led directly to the workstation. It could be displayed in the form of a 3D holographic projection, allowing the maintenance workers to have a panoramic view of their work progress. It was as if the maintenance workers were right next to them. However, it gave people the feeling that a considerable service fee was likely to be pasted on top of the maintenance fees. There were many eyes here, so Cragburst didn't discuss sensitive topics with Luonan. He looked at the workstation's situation in extreme boredom. He wasn't interested in the maintenance worker, who wore a work mask. He swept his eyes over the electronic price list and clicked his tongue over and over. This place is recommended by Papercut? He can't be a broker here, right? For a price that could make a nouveau riche like Cragburst click his tongue, it was more or less the same for Luonan. However, he still believed in Papercut's sincerity. He just laughed and didn't respond. On the other side, the maintenance consultant poured tea for them. She spoke in a soft and gentle voice. Sirs, please be at ease. This is one of the 20 A-class workstations in the repair center. The maintenance workers, related personnel, and equipment are all top-notch in Xia City. We will certainly be able to provide the most efficient service to our customers. A beep sounded from the workstation before she even finished speaking. A message was transmitted back. The maintenance consultant received the message and was slightly stunned. She then smiled at Luonan, revealing her standard 8 teeth. Hello, customer. Since the situation of the product you sent for repair is a bit special, the maintenance worker will personally explain the situation. She turned to the side and made some fine adjustments, allowing the holographic projection to be clearer. However, the maintenance worker displayed on the projection wasn't as pleasing to the eye as she was. The maintenance worker had already stopped his inspection work. He lifted his mask, revealing his thin cheeks. His appearance was unremarkable, but since he was able to work as a technician on an A-class workstation, he was undoubtedly an outstanding professional. He sat behind the workstation and nodded toward Luonan and Cragburst. He looked quite amiable. Chapter 327. Hello, Worker Zhai. Luonan greeted politely, but he soon blinked his eyes. He felt that this maintenance technician was a bit familiar. Furthermore, he noticed that Worker Zhai seemed to be sizing him up as well. Worker Zhai's gaze wasn't directed at his face. Instead, it lingered on the notebook between his elbows. Their eyes met again. Worker Zhai smiled and continued. There are no relevant records of the product sent by the customer for repair. Preliminary confirmation is that it's a DIY product. Speaking of which, this student seems to like this kind of thing? Luonan was startled. He looked at where Worker Zhai's gaze landed, and memories from the depths of his brain were flipped to the surface. He suddenly realized why Worker Zhai's face felt so familiar. He had indeed seen it before. Last month, he had a conflict with Li Xueqing and his gang, and his flexible e-ink screen was trampled. Taking advantage of the Precision Electronics Interest Club's club activity, he wanted to repair it. It was this Worker Zhai who had disassembled the flexible e-ink screen, allowing Luonan to discover the external neuron. He remembered that he had behaved rather rudely in a moment of desperation. Fortunately, this Worker Zhai had a good temper and did not hold it against him. Luonan revealed a smile as well. Ah, Worker Zhai works here. Many thanks for the other day. What are you thanking me for? All I did was dismantle and reassemble it once, nothing else. By the way, is that board fixed? Luonan didn't know how to answer the question. While he was stunned, Worker Zhai changed the topic. What you brought today is also a DIY product. There's no ready-made manual to refer to, so it'll be more troublesome to repair. Currently, the number of visitors in the center hasn't reached the maximum, so I suggest you apply for a special service. It'll be much faster. DIY. In other words, it wasn't mass-produced. Luonan was a bit surprised, but he felt that this was reasonable. Apart from the dojos, he had never seen such a Tai Chi ball. He felt that its range of application was relatively narrow. Before he could respond, Cragburst asked the maintenance consultant at his side. This counts as an impromptu upgrade, right? What's the price? The pretty maintenance consultant explained softly. The two gentlemen have been booked by someone else on their behalf. All expenses for today will be borne by that customer. As for the exclusive service, it was mainly to move from the current open workbench to an independent studio to satisfy the need for privacy. It's still within the scope of the client's authority, so there's no need for additional expenses. Is that so? Papercut is being so generous. Let's not be unreasonable. Let's just turn. Crag Burst simply overstepped his boundaries and helped Luo Nan make the decision. Luo Nan had no objections. Then let's enter the proprietary service mode. Workshop number 245. Please follow the maintenance consultant and wait. Worker Zhai, who was on the other side, performed a series of operations and waited for the reserve maintenance technician to arrive and take over his duties. Luo Nan and Crag Burst followed the pretty maintenance consultant. They passed through the open hall and arrived at a completely sealed workshop. The layout here wasn't too different from the outside. The only difference was that there were a few more facilities, but it was even more cramped. A big guy like Crag Burst felt a bit suffocated. Just as he was mumbling to himself, a transmission channel suddenly opened on the operating platform. The mechanical device that Luo Nan had sent for repair was fixed onto a special support. It was transported over and placed in front of the center of the operating platform. This mechanical device was the core of the Tai Chi Dojo's Tai Chi ball. It was spherical in shape and about the size of a fist. The outer layer was a very thin metal mesh, and the inside was a device similar to a gyroscope. At this time, on the special support, the outer metal net was constantly expanding and shrinking. But that was all. Crag Burst clicked his tongue twice. Isn't it troublesome to send it back and forth? As he spoke, he pulled Luo Nan forward to observe the device. The maintenance consultant had told them before that an independent workshop was different from the outside. Customers could directly enter the operating platform and observe from a close distance. They could even operate the device with the permission of the maintenance technician. Some DIY enthusiasts wanted this sort of atmosphere. They flocked like ducks to this place. Luo Nan was mechanically illiterate. He had no concept of operating anything, but Crag Burst had served in the Coastal Defense Force for many years. He could be considered half an expert. However, he never paid attention to what Luo Nan had sent for repair. Now that he saw it up close, he said, "This toy looks quite familiar. It looks like a hovering target?" The prototype should be the Paya Corporation's Comet Model 3 hovering target. It's a very old model. It was introduced to the market 10 years ago. Worker Zhai entered from another employee passageway and continued Crag Burst's conversation. Crag Burst snapped his fingers. Yes, it's the Comet Model 3. The gyroscope in the middle is actually an AI hub. It's special and it's very durable. When I was in the military, I could use it for a long time with a random target shell. It's easy to repair. The Comet Model 3 isn't hard to repair, but this product is a bit different. Worker Zhai walked to the side of the two. He wasn't tall. He was about the same height as Luo Nan. He had a friendly smile, but when he stood in front of the operating platform and activated the relevant privileges, all sorts of maintenance and testing equipment started up one after another. They made fine adjustments according to his position. The entire workshop seemed to revolve around him. TSK. This room of equipment can't be bought for $1 million. Crag Burst turned his head to look all around with a very curious appearance. Worker Zhai answered, the standard workshop's configuration price is $7.5 million. After 8 years of depreciation, I've added a few personal equipment here. It's convenient to use. Look, there are at least 2 areas of this hovering target that have undergone major repairs. Crag Burst moved closer and discussed with Worker Zhai. I just saw one area. The outer shell of the target has been removed and replaced with a metal net. I don't know what it's used for. It's a fixed support, right? Luo Nan relied on his memory to compare the diameter of the Tai Chi ball to the size of the hovering target. He felt that there were some differences. He then looked at the metal net that was constantly expanding and contracting, and he made a few guesses. Fixed. Worker Zhai thought for a moment, but he didn't ask further. Instead, he gestured for the two to look over. The net is just an accessory. The core problem doesn't lie here. As he spoke, he performed a few operations on the support. It was unknown how he did it, but he actually removed the metal net and placed it to the side. All that was left was a gyroscope-like object in the center. The gyroscope's rotor didn't move at this time, and the inner and outer frames were placed there in a well-behaved manner. Worker Zhai then controlled the mechanical arm, including the probe and other objects, to disassemble the gyroscope. The difficulty of disassembling the gyroscope, this time, seemed to be quite a bit lower than the flexible e-ink screen from back then. Within a short minute, the three heard a slight clicking sound. It seemed that some sort of mechanism had been activated. The gyroscope's central axis was disassembled from the top to the bottom, revealing an object that looked like broken glass. Next, Worker Zhai operated the mechanical arm and used special tweezers to pluck the object out. He placed it on a miniature support and slightly secured it. It could be seen at this time that the object's outer appearance was actually quite regular. It was rhombohedral, and it had clearly undergone precision processing. A central control chip? Cragburst asked in a low voice. His breathing slowed down a bit, afraid that he would blow this thing away. Luonan didn't speak. He just narrowed his eyes. Chapter 328. Luonan observed the rhombohedron object as well as Worker Zhai. The latter was carefully sizing up the former, with great concentration. It's definitely not part of the Comet 3's design. The hovering target's control program is very simple. The main control chip has already been integrated into the shaft. And this little thing seems to be unnecessary. Cragburst asked curiously. Unnecessary? Let's do an experiment. Studio 245. 1 Batwing Model A outer shell, thank you. The last few sentences were directed at the warehouse in the maintenance center. As he spoke, Worker Zhai let go of the rhombohedron object. He inspected the gyroscope's rotor and its internal and external frames, especially the disassembled central shaft. He repeated this process twice before beginning to assemble it. It was obvious that Worker Zhai had deliberately ignored the tiny rhombohedron during the assembly process. He had only restored the gyroscope-shaped floating target. His speed was very fast, and he finished assembling the shell before the conveyor belt arrived. When the outer shell arrived, Worker Zhai quickly stuffed the gyroscope inside. In the end, what appeared before Luonan and Cragburst's eyes was a very strange bowl-shaped object. It looked like a flying saucer that wasn't very regular. Cragburst was very familiar with this toy. The Batwing Model A target aircraft. It combines high-speed flight and emergency hovering maneuverability very well. The Model B and Model C can actually be used as simple weapons platforms. They can be used in the wilderness. Worker Zhai smiled at Cragburst. This could be considered an affirmation of his expertise. Then he let go. And the big bowl, target machine floated in the air with a low hum. It slowly moved horizontally, gliding past the tips of the three people's noses, and gradually accelerated. As the speed of the target plane increased, it was like a bat, flying back and forth in the narrow workshop. But there was no collision. Worker Zhai looked at the light screen to the side. Various test data was displayed on it like a waterfall. 10 seconds later, he shook his head. I didn't discover any problems. As he spoke, Worker Zhai cast his gaze toward the miniature support. His gaze paused for a moment under the rhombohedron object. He switched to the holographic interface and displayed the repair order that Luonan had filled out before. I need to make a confirmation. The fault you discovered, Mr. Luo. It's a Tai Chi ball that can float in the air. Luonan was very cooperative as he gave a general description of the situation. Worker Zhai thought for a moment, then asked, how heavy is the Tai Chi ball? It's half the height of a person, and it's made of hard metal. It should weigh at least a few hundred kilograms. Luonan really wasn't too sure. Worker Zhai made a sound of surprise. Cragburst coughed. Nanster, the motor of the floating target can only lift 5 kilograms at most. Worker Zhai shook his head. I don't see any changes to the floating target's propulsion and transmission mechanism. If the metal mesh is used as a support, then it can be considered a part of the transmission mechanism. However, its propulsion doesn't make sense. Is that so? Luonan only had a superficial understanding of the Tai Chi ball. It was very hard for him to answer such a question. After a moment of consideration, he could only pull up his contact list and call Shuelei. At this time, Shuelei was at home. It seemed like he was still doing a lot of training. He was panting slightly. He really didn't want to waste any time. Of course, he was familiar with the Tai Chi ball. But the problem was that he was not good with words. If he really had to describe it, he would not be able to express himself. The Tai Chi ball is able to continuously accumulate and transform the energy that is struck into various forms of rebounding force. It can also directly change the nature of the energy. Crag burst bumped Luo Nan with his shoulder. He's worthy of being your best friend. It's the same. Luo Nan ignored him. He still wanted to communicate with Xue Lei, but Xue Lei had already found a more efficient method. How about this? I recorded a video last year about training with the Tai Chi ball. I'll send it to you now. You'll understand once you see it. It's true. The video file was right next to his hand, and Xue Lei immediately began to transfer it. The network environment of the repair center was quite outstanding. Luo Nan saw that there was a lot of bandwidth, so he simply opened up a video call, allowing Xue Lei to directly participate. Xue Lei and Cragburst had met before. Luo Nan just introduced Worker Zhai to Xue Lei, and the video file was finished transferring. Worker Zhai indicated for Luo Nan to transfer the file to the wide hologram, and they watched it together. The video was recorded from a very monotonous angle. It was clear that Cragburst was recording himself. The location was in Gym Master Xiu's backyard. Xue Lei was bare-chested, revealing a body of strong muscles. He adjusted his breathing and punched. Xue Lei punched the Tai Chi ball, producing a deep sound. It was clear that Xue Lei's strength was considerable. However, the Tai Chi ball only trembled slightly. This penetrative force is truly beautiful. Cragburst clicked his tongue in admiration. He was not stingy with his praise. He turned his head to face Luo Nan and said, "Leister is truly amazing." He sent the maximum power of his fist into the center of the Tai Chi ball. The hovering target took the brunt of the force. That's why there's such an effect. Xue Lei's strikes continued without end. His speed didn't change, and the Tai Chi ball maintained its stability from beginning to end. A minute passed, and his fist suddenly increased in strength. His bare arm actually made an explosive sound out of thin air. Not only was the force of this strike fiercer, but there was also a change in the force behind it. The Tai Chi ball didn't fall back after receiving a heavy blow. Instead, it actually jumped up. It jumped over the edge of the metal bowl, reaching a height of 20 centimeters. Xue Lei connected with another punch, just as it was about to sink. The hovering target jumped up once more, swaying a bit. This time it didn't come down. The Tai Chi ball, weighing several hundred kilograms, floated in the air. It was 30 centimeters above the ground, and it began to spin. Xue Lei's expression was focused. The speed of his punches didn't change, but one punch after another brought with it an explosive sound. The hovering target was still swaying at first. Occasionally it would shift, but later on, the swaying became smaller and smaller, and the spinning speed grew faster and faster. The luminous patterns on its surface were visible even in broad daylight. The video ended here. Cragburst applauded and cheered. Xue Lei was a bit embarrassed. Luo Nan looked at Worker Zhai. Worker Zhai was looking at the still image of the video. Worker Zhai was a bit spellbound. He sighed in admiration, but there wasn't much surprise in his expression. Cragburst saw Worker Zhai's expression and grinned. "What do you think? Do you see the trick yet? Can it be fixed?" Worker Zhai lowered his head and pondered for a moment. His expression was still calm. "I get the gist of it. It should be a way to store and transform external kinetic energy. The storage is like a spring. The greater the force, the greater the expected rebound. The method of transformation is quite interesting. It goes from straight force to rotational force. There's also that buoyancy. Let me do an experiment." He moved the miniature support, sending the miniature rhombohedron into a certain instrument chamber. It was fixed on all four sides. A buzzing vibration immediately rang out. It could be seen that it was imitating Xue Lei's fist strength. It was transmitting external kinetic energy into the rhombohedron. Luo Nan adjusted the direction of the video to let Xue Lei see the process of the experiment. The three people observed very attentively, but there were no changes to the miniature rhombohedron, even after a dozen or so seconds had passed. Worker Zhai wasn't in a hurry. He soon made another adjustment. This time, he directly connected the miniature rhombohedron with electricity. The voltage and current increased, but the rhombohedron within the instrument chamber still didn't have any reaction. It's completely broken? Shuele was a bit disappointed. Should we try again after it's completely restored? Kragburst wanted to change his method. Workerjai didn't speak any further. He just stared at the instrument chamber and continued to make adjustments. A metal rod flipped up under the operating table as he operated. The top was shaped like a handle, and it was even wrapped in a layer of insulating cloth. When the metal rod was at a 90-degree angle with the ground, Workerjai pressed down on the handle at the top and took a deep breath. Luonan raised his eyebrows at this moment. Kragburst turned his head a bit later. The two locked gazes, confirming that subtle fluctuations were being produced on the mental plane. Hey, it's changed. It's changed. Shuele discovered the changes within the instrument chamber in the first instant through the high-speed network, without any delay. Luonan and Kragburst turned their gazes and saw several long and slender threads extending out from the outer layer of the miniature rhombohedron. They slowly swayed up and down, left and right. Chapter 329. A total of 6 fine threads extended out from the miniature rhombohedron. They swayed and floated within the chamber of the device. At first glance, it looked like a struggling alien jellyfish. Luonan pursed his lips, and his gaze focused on the interior of the device. He felt that the scene before him had a sense of déjà vu. It was as if he had seen it somewhere before. Kragburst swept a few glances before shifting his gaze to Workerjai. From the outside, this maintenance technician's forehead was covered in sweat from just holding the metal rod. It looked like he was working very hard. At the same time, the fluctuations on the mental plane grew more and more obvious. There was nothing much to say. Workerjai was an ability user. Kragburst sized up this person a few more times. He felt that this was unexpected, but reasonable. It was natural that the channel introduced by Papercut was linked to ability users. As Luonan's bodyguard, Kragburst needed to eliminate all sources of danger. But frankly speaking, it was a bit difficult to link this person to a source of danger. Workerjai's performance was really quite average. Such a description could be said to be polite. Kragburst was experienced and knowledgeable. He had his own yardstick in mind. Workerjai's performance of disturbing the mental plane just now was probably a level higher than that of the ability users Kragburst had seen before. Being able to consciously use mental strength to affect the material plane was pretty good for ordinary people. But that was all there was to it. The metal rod and its related instruments were used for amplification. If it weren't for this intermediate link, with Workerjai's level of mental strength, it was unknown if the interference force he formed would be able to lift up even a strand of fine hair. Kragburst relaxed after making this judgment. He noticed that Luonan was still seriously observing the device's chamber. Looking at Luonan's focused appearance, the miniature rhombohedron seemed to be more valuable than expected. A thin layer of sweat had already formed on Workerjai's forehead. His breathing was no longer even, but the appearance of the 6 tentacles around the rhombohedron in the device's chamber didn't change at all. Luonan finally spoke at this time. Will this toy undergo further changes? Workerjai took a deep breath and spoke much faster. There should be. These 6 tentacles are quite sensitive to interference force, but they haven't formed an effective structure for kinetic energy storage and transformation, let alone those related to maglev. If the Tai Chi ball itself doesn't possess a corresponding arrangement, then these tentacles are the most worthy of attention. My abilities aren't enough. Can I help? Not to mention Luonan and Kragburst, even Shuele, who was watching from afar, sensed that something was off. He assumed that Luonan had forgotten to introduce him. He grinned and said, "So Workerjai is also from the society?" Workerjai also smiled. He didn't hide it. Papercut is my recommendation, but he's still in the evaluation period. It's already been over 5 years. Shuele exclaimed, "It can't be, the evaluation is very strict." He had already prepared to join the Ability User Professional Association, and the relevant procedures had already begun. With a busybody like Zhang Yingying around, he didn't have to worry about anything. Therefore, he was still at the stage where he didn't fully understand the 3 stages of the association's assessment: awakening and vocation. When he heard 5 years, his heart skipped a beat. Worker Zhai continued to smile faintly. Luo Nan and Cragburst didn't explain in person. After all, speaking the truth was a bit hurtful. In terms of sensing on the mental plane, even 10 Cragbursts added together couldn't compare to Luo Nan. If Cragburst was able to discover the situation, then Luo Nan certainly wouldn't have any problems as well. Moreover, Luo Nan's situation was more detailed and vivid. From Luo Nan's perspective, Worker Zhai's mental strength and his ability to interfere with the material plane were truly too horrible to look at. Some time ago, he had a similar problem. But even if the appearance was similar, the essence was completely different. Luo Nan possessed mental strength that far exceeded normal standards. But because of the special circumstances of formatting theory, a barrier was formed between him and the material plane. In the end, he relied on coupling with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to break through the shackles. It could be said that Worker Zhai's problem was a marvel, but his method of solving it was extraordinary. As for Worker Zhai, his problem was the simplest and most straightforward kind. His cultivation was insufficient. There was nothing praiseworthy about him on the mental plane, be it in terms of intensity or level of immersion. He simply wasn't up to standard by the standards of the society. Luo Nan remembered Zhang Yingying saying that there were 600,000 ability users in the world, but only 70,000 awakened ones. It was these 70,000 people that formed the framework of the Ability User Professional Association. Unawakened characters like Worker Zhai belonged to the category of people that the society could record, but they were normally disinclined to pay attention to. If Worker Zhai was a bit younger, like Luo Nan who was 15 or 16 years old, then perhaps there would be some anticipation. The problem was that Worker Zhai was at least 40 years old. The word potential no longer held any meaning. Worker Zhai found it harder and harder to hold on with these few words. He shook his head. Who's going to give me a hand? How? Just hold this handle and pour your strength into it. As long as you can form interference power, then it's fine. Then I'll do it. Cragburst wasn't willing to let Luo Nan touch some inexplicable things. He took a step forward and firmly grasped the metal handle after Worker Zhai released his grip. The tentacles that extended from the miniature rhombohedron had a tendency to shrink inward because Worker Zhai had released his grip. However, Cragburst didn't seem to exert much force, but the contracted tentacles suddenly protruded out by a large chunk. They even became a bit thicker. The space of the device's chamber became much narrower, so much so that the tentacles had to continuously coil in order to accommodate them. Soon, the 4 people could clearly see that 5 forks had silently separated from each tentacle. They were finer than the tentacles of the previous level, and they were slowly elongating. There were a total of 36 filaments. They crisscrossed from time to form a marvelous dynamic pattern. This is amazing. Shuelei's attention was immediately drawn back. He scratched his head as he watched. There are other mechanisms in this toy. Cragburst was blinking as well. It was as if he was recalling something. He asked Worker Zhai, "Is this okay?" "Wait a moment." Worker Zhai used the scanning device to analyze the dynamic pattern formed by the tentacles. He formed a simple diagram and transferred it to the holographic screen. Then, he began to operate and make corrections. In a short 10 seconds, there was a dynamic pattern. It appeared one after another, appearing in succession. It was like an animated short film. There was a clear sequence to it. The structure of the kinetic energy conversion is okay, but it's still not enough. Again? Watch me. Cragburst didn't pass on this responsibility. He added 2 more layers of force as he chatted and laughed. However, there was no further reaction from the device's chamber. Worker Zhai indicated for Cragburst to look at the dashboard below the metal rod. Continue. It's fine as long as the needle doesn't enter the red zone. Then I'm going to play for real. Cragburst grinned. A layer of dark red radiance seemed to suffuse his bronze-skinned face. Even his pupils revealed a scarlet color. His 5 fingers moved a bit on the metal handle. He was just about to exert force when he heard, "Stop." Cragburst instinctively withdrew his force. He glanced at the dashboard, but he saw that the needle had already made a large jump. It had nearly entered the red zone. "I haven't even used my strength yet. Your interference ability is too rough. It's not suitable." Worker Zhai turned his gaze to the other side as he spoke. Chapter 330. Luo Nan understood tacitly when he saw Worker Zhai cast a gaze at him. "Let me try." Hey, I'm using a penetrating strength." But Cragburst didn't let go. He was a bit unconvinced, but he was still wary on a deeper level. "You tell me first. Let's not talk about Nanster. I don't seem to be much worse than Shuelei. If he can activate the effects, why can't I?" Worker Zhai responded warmly. "I'm thinking about it. There are 2 reasons. First, my amplification device is more suited to mental ability users. You are a typical fleshly body enhanced. Your interference direction is different. Second, this miniature rhombohedron is perhaps more like our wristbands. Daily usage is 1 layer. Developer options are another layer." Cragburst rubbed his big bald head. He felt that what Worker Zhai said made some sense. He cast his gaze at Luo Nan, who nodded. Worker Zhai's operation, just now, was extremely precise and meticulous. His mental strength borrowed the minute electric current of the device to realize the amplification of interference on the material plane. But when it came to you, Brother Cragburst, the amplification device's effects were completely destroyed. "So it's like this." Cragburst nodded. When he looked at Worker Zhai, his gaze was a bit different. "Is it electron affinity? This ability is quite good. It's especially suited for maintenance. It's like adding wings to a tiger. Which place doesn't need electricity nowadays?" Worker Zhai laughed involuntarily. "It's not suited. It's necessary. I'm a mental ability user. If I can't realize electron affinity, then further research would be wishful thinking." As he spoke, he cast his gaze at Luo Nan. His thoughts were rather complicated. "I don't even dare to think about Mr. Luo's eyesight. We amateurs who haven't entered the door are truly left in the dust when compared to the awakened. Well, Nanster is a special case." As Cragburst spoke, he made room for Luo Nan. He added, "I feel like I've seen this toy somewhere before." Luo Nan didn't speak. He took a step forward and grasped the metal rod. When Cragburst let go, the tentacles of the miniature rhombohedron retracted. Luo Nan didn't release his power in time. He didn't make any further movements until the tentacles were completely retracted. "What's wrong?" Cragburst didn't understand. Probably just observing. Worker Zhai was a precision-oriented, mentally enhanced. Even though he was unable to observe Luo Nan's movements on the mental plane, he was able to guess the corresponding train of thought. Cragburst said, "Oh." He felt a bit embarrassed for being so suspicious of Worker Zhai just now. He pressed down on his earlobe and made a gesture for members of the society. "Let's add each other as friends." Worker Zhai smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "I'm sorry, I can't." You don't have an ID on the psychic wave network?" "There's one, but it's hard to use." Worker Zhai shook his head again. "I do have some mental strength, but it's not enough to interfere with reality at any time. That's why I've only been able to wander around the periphery of the circle these past few years, relying on my craftsmanship to make a living. Fortunately, Papercut took care of me and often introduced me to some work." There was no doubt that Luo Nan had been introduced in this manner. Cragburst said in surprise, "It can't be that bad? I can see that your interference force is on point. That's in the studio. Outside of here, I'm no different from an ordinary person." Worker Zhai glanced at Luo Nan. He saw that Luo Nan still hadn't made a move, so he turned his head back and said, "Papercut has put in quite a bit of effort. He's tried to help me with the awakening ritual, but I'm limited by my talent. I've only gained a bit of an affinity with electrons over the past 5 years. I'm still far from being able to do anything else. I need to rely on a hearing aid in order to use the hexa-ear and access the psychic wave network. Right now, I've only reached the 2nd level. I can only watch television, listen to the radio, and so on. I have no way of interacting with others. A hearing aid? Did you design it yourself? Cragburst was able to understand that this was a type of amplification device. He was a bit curious. The people of the society, as long as they're involved in mechanical and electronic design, amplification devices have always been a hot topic. The larger the measurement, the better. You're talking about the four-dimensional measurement. Worker Zhai was a technician. He always paid attention to similar theories. Right when he was about to discuss a thing or two with Cragburst, Luonan suddenly let out a long breath. His palm left the metal rod. The miniature rhombohedron was still in its initial state within the device's chamber. Compared to Worker Zhai and Cragburst's progress, it was a complete and utter regression. Xuele, who was watching from afar, didn't participate in the conversation between Cragburst and Worker Zhai. He focused on observing Luonan's methods from beginning to end. But the more he watched, the more disappointed he became. Nanster, is it no good? I want to take it out and give it a try. Luonan turned his head to look at Worker Zhai. This device won't be of much help to me. The direction of its amplification is mainly in strength. I feel that it would be better to go a bit deeper. Depth, strength, sensitivity, and affinity. These were the four-dimensional measurement that Worker Zhai had just mentioned. They were the four basic measurement standards that the society used for mental strength. There wasn't any particularly rigorous logic or scientific basis in these measurements. They were mainly established by common usage, reflecting the fuzziness of the research of supernatural powers in the current era. Worker Zhai didn't have any objections. My specialty is in electronic equipment and mechanical design. I'm considering the internal structure of this thing. As for the mental domain, you have the final say. He opened the device chamber as he spoke, and the miniature rhombohedron was mounted on the support. It moved out and stopped at the outer edge of the workbench. Luonan gave it a few more glances and asked, Worker Zhai, you just said that just the kinetic energy conversion structure isn't enough. You mean, from the situation shown in the video, there are at least two structures that aren't shown: maglev and energy storage. Also, I want to know where the power components are located. Worker Zhai casually drew several structural sketches on the hologram, corresponding to the kinetic energy conversion structure. From a conventional train of thought, the miniature rhombohedron is more like an integrated circuit. It's not a problem to use it in electronic equipment. But what kind of work is needed to drive the several 100-kilogram Tai Chi ball? Those tentacles are a good choice. It's fine as long as the transmission and work parts are combined together. But I haven't discovered the corresponding structural design. Luonan had a general understanding. What Worker Zhai means is that there should be more tentacles to form more structures. Worker Zhai used an electronic pen to tap the hologram. Dynamic, precise, and sufficiently firm. Cragburst listened to them speak, and a certain train of thought from before resurfaced. It became clearer and clearer, separated only by a thin layer of paper. He rubbed his forehead forcefully. Tentacles. Structure. Precision. Huh, what's that again? Luonan laughed and asked. In other words, the miniature rhombohedron driving the Tai Chi ball is very likely to be accomplished through those tentacles? Worker Zhai nodded, and Cragburst clapped his hands forcefully. Holy crap! The dynamo core. Luonan didn't say anything more. He took a deep breath, and his towering iceberg-like mental strength resonated with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Incorporeal lightning crackled and scuttled, forming a seemingly substantial bolt of lightning in the depths of the cracks in his eyes. The miniature rhombohedron inexplicably trembled at the focus of his gaze. This object couldn't compare to the external neuron. It couldn't compare to Jack's Deep Sea Type 4. But the sparkle on the mental plane, and the corresponding spark of lightning in Luonan's eyes truly belonged to the dynamo core. Chapter 332. 6 tentacles extended out from the miniature rhombohedron within the workshop, followed by a second layer. This time, the tentacles were even more slender. There were 6 main trunks and 30 secondary branches. The scale was already far above the core rhombohedron. Several dozen tentacles undulated and fluttered, If one did not have a predetermined view, it was likely that they would have overlooked the existence of the rhombohedron. The current situation was no different from the situation in the device chamber. At most, the tentacles extended a bit more. It was just that the three people in the workshop were much more serious than before. Luo Nan squinted his eyes, adjusting the glow of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Crag Burst shifted his feet lightly to adjust the angle of the heart lantern. As for Worker Zhai, he brought a portable microscope with him. He switched lenses from time to time, searching for a suitable focal length. Are there any changes? Shuele was limited by his long-range view. He was unable to distinguish the details clearly. He blinked a dozen times, but he was unable to see anything. In the end, Worker Zhai gave a response. He said, "Wait a moment." He took a piece of tin foil from the workbench and rolled it into a strip. He carefully extended it over, using the tip to streak across the empty region of the tentacle structure. The tip of the tin foil was soon obstructed, and it bent a bit. Under the illumination of the workshop's lights, a thin stream of light streaked across the empty region. It was unremarkable, but it was still captured by the others. There's something. Shuele immediately understood. It was very likely that there was an even finer structure in the empty region of the tentacle structure. However, its composition had already surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Worker Zhai slowly pulled back the tin foil, but the tip of the tin foil inexplicably tore as soon as he pulled back his elbow. It was as if an invisible blade had sliced through it. The front half of the tin foil first broke off, and then it shattered. During this period, it could be seen that the 36 tentacles didn't have any obvious changes. Instead, a subtle trembling sound rang out in the workshop. The source was from the tentacle structure. Careful, careful. Crag Burst pressed down with his hands, indicating for Worker Zhai to take it gently. Worker Zhai thought for a moment, and simply flicked the second half of the tin foil toward the top of the tentacle structure, letting it fall freely. As expected, the tin foil tumbled a few times in midair. Before it could make contact with any of the visible tentacles, it was crushed into powder by the invisible strangulation. The sound of breathing had disappeared from the workshop, and the trembling sound of the tentacle structure grew clearer. Worker Zhai turned to look at Luo Nan. Luo Nan's gaze still lingered on the rhombohedron. Worker Zhai spoke softly. "Did you see it?" Crag Burst curled his lips. "You're just showing off your superior spirit, Dog Dai." Beside him, Worker Zhai smiled bitterly. From this point of view, he, an unawakened spiritually enhanced individual, was worse than a dog. Fortunately, after choosing the engineering specialization route, he could rely on the assistance of equipment, and he could do more. A series of cracking sounds rang out from beneath the workbench. A circle of white boards rose up in a slanted manner, looking like a coarse calyx. The tentacle structure was half enclosed within, forcing Luo Nan and Crag Burst to retreat. Several spotlights lit up above, adjusting their angles so that the light could penetrate the visible and invisible tentacle structure and cast a shadow on the whiteboard. F***CKME. Crag Burst was caught off guard. On the snow-white board, there seemed to be thousands of snakes wriggling, constantly changing according to the angle of the light. They could see clearly now, through the special light projection, the 36 strands, which were thinner than strands of hair, became thumb-thick on the board. And between them, a densely packed shadow spider web was woven. Thus, everyone confirmed that there was a layer of even finer strands that couldn't be seen with the naked eye between the two layers of 36 strands. The strands were densely woven like a web, forming an even more complex and precise structure. Worker Zhai operated the computer and cut the shadow spider web from multiple angles together. It didn't take long for a relatively complete 3D structure to be formed. It appeared on the workbench in the form of a projection. Luo Nan's gaze went back and forth between the real thing and the 3D projection. Crag Burst couldn't see through it, so he simply asked, "How many strands are there in total?" "The current count is 1,276 strands." Worker Zhai swept his eyes over the data, and then sighed. "The structure just now needs to be completely replaced. There's also the material analysis. The resources allocated to me may not be enough. They may not be suitable either. Cragburst didn't understand. What? There's a supercomputer here in the Electronic City. Its name is Crossover. With my privileges, I can request a portion of the resources. Actually, I'm using it right now. Its main purpose is to analyze the dynamic structure. Worker Zhai pointed at the holographic screen. Page after page of diagrams flashed by at high speed. They were all structural diagrams extracted from the shadow spider web that had just been confirmed. Over 1,000 diagrams had flashed by in the time Worker Zhai spoke. It looks pretty fast, huh? You can't provide effective parameters, so you can only rely on the method of exhaustion. It's meaningless. This is because it's impossible for the computer to understand how a glass-like object can split into over 1,000 tentacles of varying thicknesses, far surpassing the size of its storage capacity. These tentacles are in a state when they're coiled up, and how they function when they're released. Worker Zhai sighed when he spoke to this point, especially when the stimulating factor involves the mental plane. If this is the case, the mainstream engineering of humanity isn't ready yet. I'm powerless to do anything for the time being. Shuele let out a sigh, a little disappointed. Cragburst shook his big bald head and sighed along with Worker Zhai. However, his mentality was more stable than everyone else's. He turned to look at Luonan. It's a big discovery. What do you think? Should we transfer it to the society to take a look? Luonan didn't respond immediately. He just asked Worker Zhai, "Can I put it away now?" Worker Zhai was actually a bit reluctant, but he couldn't find a reason to refuse. He just nodded with a bitter smile. Luonan closed his eyes slightly, isolating the effects of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The 3 layers of over 1,000 tentacles, whether they were tangible or intangible, all retracted back. The volume of the miniature rhombohedron didn't show any obvious changes. Worker Zhai couldn't be bothered to tidy up his workbench. He operated the portable microscope with one hand and moved closer to the miniature rhombohedron. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Luonan moved to the side, and Cragburst understood. The two walked to the side and conversed in low voices. What's the difference between Jack's Deep Sea Type 4 and this one? Is it also a 3-layer structure that extends little by little? 3 layers? I don't understand this. I only skimmed through the report. Cragburst did his best to recall, but he was unable to grasp the gist of it. In the end, he simply said, "Just contact the branch's laboratory. You're one of the parties involved, and your operation score is near the top. You certainly have the right to access and consult. It's fine as long as you don't leak it." That's how it is. Not many people cared in the past. Yeah, not many people cared. Luonan curled his lips. Cragburst was a bit embarrassed. Leaking on all sides was a tradition of the society, and Luonan was the newest victim of this tradition. As such, he couldn't help but be a bit hesitant. Let the branch's laboratory handle this. You'll certainly need to explain the ins and outs of this matter. Is that okay? Leister, what's your opinion? Luonan looked at Shuele. Shuele was a bit hesitant. Shuele didn't understand the significance of the dynamo core, but he could see that this toy was far from simple. He didn't expect that repairing the device would cause complications, and that the implications weren't small. Don't think too much about it. The prophet is the gym master. Listen to his opinion. Luonan saw that Shuele was in a difficult position, so he simply declared, "This is the gym master's personal property. We stole it from the Daoguan. Even if we did it out of good intentions, we would leak our privacy. How would we explain this to the gym master later?" Shuele let out a breath of relief and nodded over and over. Luonan looked at Cragburst and Worker Zhai. Cragburst made a zipping motion with his mouth, while Worker Zhai had just recovered from his research state. He laughed and said, "Protecting the privacy of our customers is a basic principle of technicians." "Then that's good." Luonan nodded to express his thanks. Shuele asked again, "Should I tell the gym master now?" Luonan hesitated for a moment. His gaze cast toward the miniature rhombohedron, and then he turned to look at the 3-dimensional projection and the simplified diagram that appeared on the holographic screen. A long time passed before he opened his mouth, but he gave an irrelevant answer. This diagram? I don't understand it. Huh? The other three were a bit stupefied. Luonan took a step forward and swiped his hand across the holographic screen, looking at the simplified diagram that had already been swept past. Under the deduction of the allocated supercomputer resources, the structural diagram of the dynamo core appeared endlessly and was revised. From a layman's point of view, it was concise, but the corresponding professional symbols were like heavenly books. It was hard to understand. He originally wanted to use his habitual thinking methods of coupling, configuration, and so on to deconstruct it. But a few thoughts ran through his mind, and he gave up for now. He turned his head and asked, "Worker Zhai, these diagrams are too professional. Can you teach me a bit?" "Which parts?" "All of them." Worker Zhai was a bit startled, but he soon laughed. "It's a long story." The frequency at which Luonan's fingers swiped was far from being able to keep up with the speed of the supercomputer's analysis. It didn't take long for Luonan to give up, allowing the simple diagrams to sweep past. But the thoughts that popped up before became clearer and more stable. I want to learn from the beginning. I've always been mediocre in physics. I don't even need to talk about electronic engineering and mechanical design. It would naturally be best if I could make up for it. Worker Zhai looked a few more times, and he suddenly realized that the society member before him, who had already reached a higher level, was still a student. He skimmed over the relevant information. His age of 16 was very eye-catching. "What year are you in high school this year?" "First year." "You're interested in engineering?" "It's useful." Luonan was very frank. He started from a completely practical point of view. "I want to understand these structural diagrams. I need to have a concept at the very least." Worker Zhai shook his head and emphasized once more, "I can't do it in a short amount of time." On the other side, Cragburst had already been tripped by Luonan's train of thought. He simply rolled his eyes. "Weren't we discussing confidentiality issues? You even said that you wanted to confess to that gym master Xiao and be lenient. After it's fixed." Luonan cut off Cragburst's words and looked at Shuelei. "The gym master has a strange temper. I can't predict what kind of reaction he will have. If I ask him in a muddle-headed manner, we might not be able to talk. Leister, let's keep this a secret for now. Wait for me to figure out the reasoning behind this. Then we'll return it to its owner, okay?" "Okay." Shuelei was actually stupefied, especially when he looked directly into Luonan's eyes. Even though Luonan's eyes were separated by a layer of contact lenses, and even though the photoelectric signal was transmitted and restored, Luonan's gaze was still blazing to the point of terror. He had never seen Luonan like this in his memories. Wait a minute. Cragburst raised his hands in an attempt to calm Luonan down. "You said you're going to fix it. How are you going to fix it? And you're going to find the branch's laboratory? This is a contradiction. Let me tell you, even the branch's laboratory might not be able to grasp the relevant technology." Luonan didn't speak. He just swept his gaze across the room, from Worker Zhai to Cragburst, to Shuelei, and then to his own hands. Everyone had a share. Chapter 333. Cragburst was stupefied when Luonan's gaze swept over him. But he quickly came to a realization. He immediately shrunk back. "Don't talk about self-reliance. Helping each other won't do either. That's what you spiritual dogs should do. I'm a muscle type. You might as well let me kill my way into the headquarters." Luonan wasn't counting on him. He laughed and shifted his gaze. "Worker Zhai, I'll have to trouble you with this matter." Worker Zhai opened his mouth, but in the end, he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He had already expressed his helplessness on this matter many times. He was not being courteous, but had come to the final conclusion after evaluating the resources and technology involved. How could it be solved with just a please? He heard Luonan speak again. "I know that I can't be impatient, and I never thought that I would see results in a month or two. I want to take this opportunity to ask you to help me lay the foundation." Luonan wasn't someone who was good with words. He stopped speaking at this point, and saw that Worker Zhai didn't refuse on the spot. Luo Nan followed his train of thought and continued. I'm also on the mentally enhanced side. I'm also on the precision path. Brother Papercut also said that I should naturally get involved in the maintenance profession. I'll learn from you and you'll teach me. We can even exchange pointers. Cragburst saw that Luo Nan was having a hard time organizing his words. He couldn't help but speak up. You guys just happen to learn from each other. These words reminded Worker Zhai of something. His eyes lit up as he realized that this 16-year-old high school student was already an official member of the society. In terms of mental cultivation, he was definitely far above him. Luo Nan was able to have such accomplishments at such a young age. Aside from his peerless talent, Luo Nan should have quite a set of cultivation techniques. At the very least, Luo Nan's was much stronger than his wild fox Zen. In this way, not only would they be able to learn from each other, they would also be able to exchange what they need. He had spent many years outside the entrance of the association. Although he was open-minded, it was still a burden on his mind. Now that there was a new opportunity, Worker Zhai could not help but be tempted. But when he looked at the complicated structure of the shadow spider web and the thousands of diagrams on the screen, he felt a dull pain in his head. Agreeing to Luo Nan's request was easy, but Luo Nan's ultimate goal was still the dynamo core. Luo Nan didn't even have a basic direction for this. It wasn't his style to deceive himself and others. Worker Zhai unconsciously sighed again. Luo Nan knew that Worker Zhai's state of mind had changed somewhat, but there was still a hurdle in the bottom of his heart that could not be overcome. He thought for a moment and walked to the workbench. I heard you say that you're missing parameters, right? Worker Zhai's mind was in a mess. He took off his portable microscope and gently pinched the space between his eyebrows. Actually, it's a problem with the direction of research. The conversion of kinetic energy was only the simplest step. How to store it, how to do the work, and how to present it in such a precise structure. There are too many things involved. I don't know much about engineering, but if you want to talk about direction, I suggest this as a starting point. Do you have a pen? Luo Nan asked for a digital pen as he spoke. He drew a diagram on the 3D projection area on the shadow spiderweb. With years of experience in sketching, the electronic pen's glowing lines were smooth and smooth. With just a few arcs, it drew a ball at the front of the thickest tentacle. Then the tip of the pen cut the surface of the sphere, drawing a tetrahedron. Then at the outer edge, sticking to the end of the tetrahedron, he drew an even larger sphere. Worker Zhai saw the entire process of Luo Nan's operation clearly. He also saw the diagram Luo Nan drew clearly. He was immediately stupefied. Sphere. Tetrahedron. Sphere. 3 diagrams. They were nested layer by layer. Their relationships were clear, and the areas where the diagrams connected and covered overlapped a great deal with the 3-layered tentacle structure of the dynamo core. It was not a rigid correspondence, but there was a sense of harmony that was pleasing to the eye. In the field of engineering, simple feelings were unreliable, but feelings were often the precursor to success. Archetype format? Cragburst blurted out, but then he quickly corrected himself under Luo Nan's blazing gaze. Formatting theory. What a coincidence. It's quite a coincidence. There's no harm in giving it a try. Luo Nan did not understand mechanical design, but he knew that when it came to the dynamo core, he would be pleasantly surprised if he used formatting theory. This point had already been proven by Jack. He threw down the digital pen and turned around. Worker Zhai, this is what I'm thinking. There's no harm in giving it some more thought. We can keep in touch at any time. Worker Zhai's gaze was glued to the 3D diagram. He reckoned that he would not be able to remove it for a while. Luo Nan and Cragburst bid their farewells and left. They did not take the hovering target when they left. The miniature rhombohedron was also left behind. Worker Zhai had no objections to this. Basically, they had already reached an agreement to cooperate. It could be foreseen that this agreement would last for quite a long time. Even with formatting theory as a reference, it was absolutely not a simple task to completely see through the mysteries of the dynamo core. Shuelei hung up the call. He was having a headache about how to hide this matter for a longer period of time. As for Luo Nan, he sat in the SUV with his brows furrowed in deep thought. Crag Burst could not help but ask. Where are we going now? The branch's laboratory. We're going to the Shangding building. Luonan came back to his senses. What I mean is that I need the branch's laboratory's research materials related to the dynamo core. All of them. I also need to follow up on the follow-up progress. What's there to ponder about? Just directly read it. And then I'll be watched and monitored? Crag Burst grinned. Reading the materials wasn't a problem, but according to Luonan's words, he needed to follow up on the research. He needed to be deeply involved. This could indeed attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. Then let's switch things up again. Let Secretary he help. It'll be done in a few minutes. An intermediary company is fine too. Speaking of which, those intermediary agents and whatnot have been suppressed quite miserably. Secretary he is quite skilled at finding entry points. The so-called intermediaries and agents were some internal members of the society. They were hired by external powers. They relied on their membership privileges to resell the society's internal resources. After the operation against Jack last time, a few intermediaries were commissioned by Quantum Corporation to buy back the relevant equipment at a high price. They bought back nearly all of the seized equipment. Crag Burst still didn't feel that reading the materials was difficult. His train of thought diverged as he said, "A while ago, a bunch of intermediaries were fiercely raising the price of the dynamo core. Now they've all stopped. I heard that the financial backer behind them has changed. I'm talking about Quantum Corporation." "Not right now." Luonan shook his head. The financial backer Crag Burst was talking about was Luonan's old friend, Yen Yongbua. Yen Yongbua hadn't been having a good time recently. He flew back and forth between Xia City and Luo City, transforming into a flying man. Even so, his position in the company was still on the verge of collapse. The enemy's situation was unstable. This alleviated some of the pressure on Luonan. Crag Burst still didn't know where Luonan wanted to go after talking for a long time. He was just about to ask again, when a call came through on the psychic wave network. "Ying, I'm on duty today." "That's right. Boss Luo's personal bodyguard. He's right next to me." Crag Burst spoke a few words before transferring the call to the SUV's portable multimedia system. The control panel lit up, and the upper body of Zhang Yingying's image appeared. Zhang Yingying was dressed in tight-fitting clothes. There was a bit of sweat on her forehead, and a few strands of hair stuck to her hair. A snow-white towel hung from her neck. She was the same as Shui Lei from before. She had undergone a large amount of exercise. She waved at Luonan and beamed. "Hello, Boss Luo. Are you interested in swapping pointers? Let me experience your heart lantern of the eye's orifice." Next time, Luonan gave a simple answer. Zhang Yingying's invitation lacked sincerity. She waved her hand and ignored it. She changed the subject. "There's something I wanted to talk to you about on Monday. Since we bumped into each other, I'll mention it. There's money to be made. Do you want it?" Luonan frowned. "What money?" Zhang Yingying raised an eyebrow. "The money to buy the Devil Ray. Don't tell me you've collected enough." Luonan was very frank. "I haven't found a way yet." "Really?" Zhang Yingying laughed even more happily. "I'll give you a chance to do odd jobs. Do you want it?" "Odd jobs? Earn 60 million by doing odd jobs?" Luonan didn't say anything. He just looked at Zhang Yingying with cold eyes. Zhang Yingying was dissatisfied. "What kind of look is that? No one's scamming you. Our company recently expanded our business, but we don't have enough manpower. We haven't had any capable newcomers recently, so we want to subcontract out a few. The pay is quite generous. Even if we can't fill your hole, we can still make up for it. Be frank. Do you agree or not? Give me a reply." Crag Burst laughed from the side. "You need to sign up for a project when doing business. What if it's a gigolo, a princess, or something like that? Do we accept it or not?" Zhang Yingying grinned in amusement. She didn't get angry. She turned her head and shouted, "Boss, Crag Burst said that you went to a nightclub to sell." Holy crap. Crag Burst's majestic body instantly shrunk twice. He hated that he couldn't stuff himself under the driver's seat. Even Luonan instinctively leaned back a bit. Zhang Yingying laughed loudly. Of course, Her Majesty Empress Wu wasn't by her side, but the effect was still excellent. Cragburst came back to his senses and immediately cursed. You're just a fox exploiting the tiger's might. A fox is so pretty. Zhang Yingying's hands extended to the top of her head. She held her index and middle fingers together, and she nimbly crooked them twice. Cragburst spat. You're a freaking rabbit. Luonan couldn't help but grin. Zhang Yingying winked at Luonan. She beamed as she sent Luonan some information. This is the details of our subcontracted business. Time is tight. Hurry up and give us a reply. Oh right. The boss also wanted me to tell you that thanks to you, she's had quite a few social engagements recently. She's earned quite a bit of quick money, and there are people chasing after her. You're welcome. The smile on Luonan's face faded as he spoke. Zhang Yingying was clearly saying that quite a few people were trying to get Her Majesty Empress Wu's tacit approval from within the Xia City branch. This was within Luonan's expectations. Hey, aren't you worried? What's the point of worrying? People's hearts don't grow in my stomach. Cragburst coughed. Yingying probably wants you to go pay your respects and recognize her as your godmother. Go die. Zhang Yingying gave him the middle finger in a straightforward manner. You won't even be able to find the door if the boss doesn't speak. Then she gave Luonan a smile. Relax. Relax. Don't let your imagination run wild. Don't frown all day long. The boss and the president are watching. Headquarters won't be able to play their tricks a second time. As for making money, that's even easier. We ability users just need to find the right path. We can make money lying down. Cragburst blurted out. Then we're still selling. Chapter 334. Zhang Yingying didn't talk for too long. She chatted with them for a bit before hanging up. The information she sent arrived at this time. Luonan looked it up through the hexa ear while Cragburst smacked the steering wheel and laughed mischievously. This sister is too noisy. Of course she has a good heart. Luonan understood what he meant and nodded. I know. The first time he met Zhang Yingying, she was certainly quick-witted and lively, but she had a temperament that never gave way to others. She wouldn't give up until she seized the upper hand. But not only did she give Cragburst the opportunity to talk about her just now, she even put on a self-mocking attitude, stirring up the atmosphere quite lively. Luonan couldn't help but laugh when he thought of Zhang Yingying's finger curling. But his smile soon vanished and he spoke softly. I seem to be quite depressed recently. Otherwise, with Zhang Yingying's temperament, why would she deliberately make him happy? Cragburst laughed loudly. You're stressed, right? That's normal. At your age, if you're still giggling and carefree after bearing all these things, then you really need to see a doctor. Really? That's normal? Of course it's normal. Back when I was in the Coast Defense Force, every time there was a rushing tide. You know what a rushing tide is, right? It's when a large number of mutants use the astronomical spring tide as an opportunity to attack the coast defense line. It's called a landslide and a tsunami. It blots out the sky and covers the earth. Cragburst started the car, and the jeep drove out of the parking lot amidst the rumbling of the engine. It merged into the low-altitude magnetic rail of the electronic city. He continued to speak. After the warning and before the start of the battle, it's the most torturous time. There are even suicides in the barracks. A good portion of them are seasoned veterans who have experienced hundreds of battles. It's very likely that they'll survive even if they enter the battlefield. Humans have a limit to their endurance. Once the limit is exceeded, they become a freak. They're done for. But I can see that you're fine. You're far from your limit. Cragburst extended his hand as he spoke. The distance between his thumb and middle finger was quite considerable. Luonan laughed and sighed after laughing. There are still changes. He had a feeling that his reactions were a bit different when he encountered trouble. One had to know that what had just been discovered in the electronic city was the dynamo core. His father had secretly gifted him a mystical item, the key to allowing an altered human like Jack to become a burner. The level of mysterious technology that Earth's technology had yet to reach. And it even involved the mysterious power that was hidden behind the Colossus, that was Quantum Corporation. If this was a month ago, he would have disregarded everything and rushed to the Taoist gym, to find the gym master and ask him about it. He would have pestered him to death to get an answer. But now, even though his conviction to research the dynamo core was firm, it was still a long way to go, even if his heart was about to be torn apart by an intense desire. Why? It was probably because he had some misgivings. In just a month or so, he had made enemies one after another, and they were all powerful forces in the world. After a few times, even a newborn calf's horns would be flattened. Luo Nan had a faint premonition that what awaited him in front of him was a deadly minefield. It was fine if he didn't trigger it, but once he did, he wouldn't even have the chance to turn back. Sharpening one's tools was the right choice. But on the other hand, waiting in ambush also came with a price. All sorts of thoughts couldn't help but emerge in his mind. They interweaved into a dense and gloomy net, and the pressure followed him like a shadow. Indeed, he hadn't reached his limit, but he wasn't far from being a freak. Cragburst drove his car through the flow of traffic. He shot a glance at Luo Nan and grinned. "Nanster, I need to say a few words to you. Since you're a man, everyone has pressure. You can find ways to vent, but you can't show it on your face. Otherwise, people will look down on you. Vent. Cigarettes, alcohol, women. Pooh. I'm talking about learning. Turning pressure into motivation." Luo Nan copied Zhang Yingying and gave Cragburst the middle finger. Cragburst was a bit embarrassed. "Don't look into the minor details. What I'm saying is that we can't let the weekend go to waste. If you don't have any plans, I'll arrange a place for everyone to relax. Cigarettes, alcohol, and women? Don't be a bad kid." Cragburst's rough voice cut off Luo Nan's thoughts. Luo Nan laughed and asked, "Where's the Trigate district?" "It's between the main city district and Man City. It's almost 200 kilometers away. Why are we going there?" "Nothing. I saw the information Yingying sent over. It says that the partner is Trigate Security LLC. They're registered in the Trigate district. I've never heard of them before." "Oh, this used to be the camp of the Xia City garrison troops. It was removed not too long ago. The security company you're talking about should have a military background. Not bad. It's quite easy to earn money from the government and the military at this stage. What kind of business is it?" Luo Nan read from the information. "Native species, genetic and ecological maintenance." "What?" Cragburst didn't hear it clearly for the first time. Luo Nan repeated the information, clearly reading the relevant introduction. "It's a patrol and reconnaissance business. It's related to mutants." F*CK. What a scam. Cragburst smacked the steering wheel with force, and the horn exploded. This time it was Luo Nan who didn't understand. "This business isn't good?" "It has nothing to do with business. I'm saying that as long as there's a similar business, it means that the government and the military are scamming the common people." F*CK. What the hell are the garrison troops doing? Cragburst transformed into a furious youth in an instant. Luo Nan flipped through the information and slowly came to an understanding. Native species, genetic and ecological maintenance was a long and awkward name. Using one word to describe it, it was mending the pen after the sheep is lost. The mutants that were isolated in the wilderness and the ocean would occasionally break through layers upon layers of defense due to special circumstances. They would appear within the city of Xia City. This business was responsible for searching and killing these infiltrating mutants to ensure the safety of the city. Speaking of which, there were quite a few mutants within the city of Xia City. It was quite popular for rich families to raise 1 or 2 mutants. The great maw basilisk that Ruewen had killed, and the flying devil ray that Luo Nan had subdued were all mutants. But these mutants had all gone through strict inspection and quarantine procedures. Their negative effects were already reduced to the minimum. The fellows that had accidentally infiltrated were different. They often carried highly pathogenic bacteria. There were even some that had broken through reproductive isolation and were able to reproduce with Earth's native species for the next generation. Once the related mixed blood species spread out within the city's ecosystem, a few small mutations could lead to a great disaster under the enormous impetus of the population. The hidden destructive power of these mutants was even more astonishing than the mutants on the surface. Cragburst reached out and patted Luo Nan on the shoulder. The task is arduous and glorious. That's what you say when you clean up the mess of the government and the military. Luo Nan grunted but said, "It's more suitable for me." "That's right. From what I remember, there aren't many who are stronger than you in reconnaissance. But this is very time-consuming and patience-consuming." "Hey, that's not right, right?" Cragburst suddenly came to a realization. Luo Nan was still a student. His extracurricular studies were very arduous. How could he have the free time to run around the city with someone else? Chapter 335. In November, it was said that the Arctic glaciers were melting. The weather was abnormal. A cold current flowed south, pushing the moist and cold sea winds through the city. Xia City, a coastal city, became unworthy of its name in the blink of an eye. It was as if winter had arrived a month earlier. A layer of frost had actually formed on the windows of the classroom in the morning. Fortunately, this physics class was held in a large classroom. 300 people were packed to the brim. The entire classroom was quite warm without the need for any heating equipment. Luo Nan sat in a row near the window. He was attentively listening to the lecture and taking notes. Various knowledge points, as well as their corresponding diagrams and formulas, were displayed on the standard holographic screen. They were divided into categories and arranged in a clear order. Luo Nan's serious attitude made him look like a good seedling of a gifted student. If Xuelei hadn't been classmates with Luo Nan for over a month, Xuelei might have been confused just by looking at Luo Nan's current performance. "Hey, don't you have an appointment this morning?" "It's a meeting." Luo Nan didn't even raise his head as he corrected him. "What time?" 9:30. "You're leaving after class?" "I'll go with you." You want to skip class?" Xuelei was baffled. "How do I go if I don't skip class?" "Then I won't go. The agreement doesn't require me to show up in person." Luo Nan made Xuelei dizzy with just a few words. The bell for the end of class rang at this time, signifying the end of the first class of the morning. The lecturer indicated for a temporary break, and the classroom rumbled with voices. It suddenly became noisy. Luo Nan continued to adjust the structure of the notes on the holographic screen. The core content did not come from him. It was Worker Zhai's handwriting. It practically covered all the knowledge points of the high school level. All Luo Nan needed to do was fill in the details and do the corresponding high-intensity exercises. Needless to say, Luo Nan felt his thoughts become much clearer after a few tutoring sessions with Worker Zhai. There were some immediate results. Luo Nan was neither fast nor slow, but Xuelei was even more confused. He simply gave Luo Nan a push. "What does it mean?" "It means that you have to split your attention and become an incarnation. You have to take care of both sides." And so on and so forth. Xuelei's eyes went wide as he listened. Luo Nan finally finished adjusting the notes while he was in a daze. He stretched his back. Coincidentally, a student opened the window. The damp and cold wind poured in, clashing with the heating inside the room. It actually jolted the spirits of a few drowsy students. Luo Nan and Xuelei both turned their heads to look outside the window. Heading northeast from here, passing through the gaps between the buildings, was the wetland jungle at the end of the ash-gray clouds. Right now it was also dark over there. The colors of the sky and the landscape were mixed together, and it was hard to distinguish them at first glance. Normally, Xuelei wouldn't mind looking at this scenery, but when he heard Luo Nan mention those arrangements, Xuelei couldn't help but think a bit more. It's in the forest right now, right?" "Yes, as a supervisor." Luo Nan replied without thinking. He suddenly laughed. "It's really useful." Xuelei was baffled. He looked at Luo Nan again, and felt that Luo Nan's smile was quite cold. It was very awkward. Luo Nan didn't speak any further. He stood up and walked to the side of the window, gazing into the distant wetland jungle. The sky was gloomy, and the long river that cut through the forest was not visible. It was like a long gray belt, half hidden and half visible, cutting into the depths of the forest. A few water birds flapped their wings and flew up. They could be considered agile, but the scale was far from what it was a few days ago. Mutant. OF*King Mutant. That fellow has destroyed this place. Our work will go back 10 years. When the water birds flew into the sky, a small wooden boat was sailing on the long river that cut through the forest. There were 4 people on the boat. 2 young men held wooden oars in their hands. They used the most primitive method to power the small boat. Right now they were so tired that their tongues were hanging out. They also had to endure the incessant grumbling of the old man. They wanted to jump into the river and commit suicide for a time. As for old man Wu Zuanliang, who had given them a great deal of mental pressure, he was already 90 years old this year. But his spirit was still hale and hearty. Even long periods of scientific research in the wild were as relaxed as taking a stroll. The sampling and research within the campus was unable to consume his excess energy, and this made his mouth even more idle. I can hear the noise of machinery even though I'm 2 kilometers away. This is undoubtedly pollution. Those people who issued the construction permit are all grandsons. The great upheaval a week ago had turned the ecosystem of the wetland jungle into a pot of porridge. The sudden cold wave was like adding hail to snow. It made the various departments of zoology, botany, ecology, genetics. Scholars, professors, and researchers wanted to cry but had no tears. At this time, some people who disregarded the vile situation and still carried out construction work within the jungle had undoubtedly become the target of loathing. Unfortunately, from a realistic point of view, their negative emotions were completely useless. The construction team at North Bank Gear had all kinds of documents. They held the permits of the Environmental Protection Department and the school. The construction process was also carried out in strict accordance with the relevant requirements. It was done impeccably. Wu Zuanliang had tried to take advantage of his seniority to call the construction team to stop, so as to avoid an even more fatal impact on the ecosystem of the wetland that was already on the verge of collapse. But the result left him very disappointed and very unhappy. He was unhappy and wanted to complain and vent. In any case, his wife wasn't at his side, so there was no one to reprimand. Before the 2 experimental dogs, who had changed jobs, went completely crazy, a tall woman wearing hunting clothes at the bow of the boat glanced back and said with a smile, "Teacher, in terms of age, there's nothing wrong with them calling you grandfather. It's just that suddenly having a bunch of big nephews gives me a headache." Old man Wu pointed at her. "At such a young age, you already want to be an aunt. Why don't you find a partner?" The one old pan introduced, "That's something." "Teacher, if you can't remember, I can't remember either." The tall woman adjusted the brimmed hat on her head, and then her gaze cut to the 2 suffering experimental dogs. "Seniors, are you tired? Let's change hands." "No need, no need." The 2 experimental dogs stuck out their tongues, shook their heads and wagged their tails, and simultaneously paddled with all their might a few times to prove that they still had strength to spare. The woman in hunting clothes didn't say anything else, and continued to chat with old man Wu. "Teacher Pan hasn't been in good health recently, and often suffers from insomnia. Given her personality, she'll think too much when something happens to North Bank Gear. It's better to take advantage of this mess and finish repairing it as soon as possible, so as to avoid more trouble in the future." Hearing the student mention his wife, old man Wu smacked his lips and said, "Don't worry about salty carrots," before he didn't say anything else. However, it didn't take long for Wu Zuanliang to look at the messy state of the jungle on both sides of the long river, and he couldn't help cursing again. Mutants are King exterminating things, and Cloud City Water Village actually does foster breeding? That dog's hit aquarium I shouldn't have agreed to help. Old man Wu's chest drooped, and he stomped his feet. With each word, the wooden boat rocked back and forth, threatening to capsize at any moment. The 2 experimental dogs' faces were deathly pale, and the woman in hunting attire at the bow of the boat pressed down on the brim of her hat, smiling as she watched him vent. As an old-school ecologist, Wu Zuanliang loathed mutants to the extreme. The devastation and continuous mutation of these monsters had destroyed the ecological theory of the Third World War, practically negating all the value of his life before the age of 50. In the following 40 years, he continued to make achievements. and he had numerous works to his name. The people of the world gasped in admiration at his grand feat of changing the field of research in his old age and climbing to new heights. Little did he know that his love for this field of study was about to be exhausted by the ugly and complex genes of the mutants. Acumen College's wetland jungle had been practically completely isolated from the influence of the mutants for the past few decades. It was one of the few places that could evoke the ideals of his original life. But now even this place had been ruined. Old Man Wu truly felt that death was better than life. I'm going to write a letter to the school. No, I'm going to write a letter to the municipal government. Those grandsons of Cloud City Water Village. I'm going to punish them until they go bankrupt. If you want to write, then write. The woman in hunting attire echoed. At the same time, her gaze swept across the river shore, and she said with a light laugh, I'm actually more interested in that bald crow. With that kind of body, it's already surpassed a raven, right? I don't think a similar giant phenomenon has ever appeared before. Which one? When Old Man Wu turned his head to look, the large black-winged bird circling in the air had already disappeared into the depths of the forest, disappearing without a trace. It just so happened that the river curved at this moment, and the forest ahead was sparse. Another part of the lake had opened up, and one could faintly see gear standing on the north shore. It was covered in rust. When he truly saw the building, Old Man Wu, who had previously been muttering curses, became silent. He looked for a long time before turning his face and asking about the crow. Did you get a picture? It was sent to my mailbox. Teacher, I have an appointment, so I have to leave early today. Oh, you mentioned it yesterday. Go, there's nothing to do right now anyway. Oh, the four sides of this place aren't touching. Let young dear and the others row a bit more. The two experimental dogs' hearts were filled with tears, but they still had to agree. Yeah, it's a bit. Let's row a bit more. Just go straight to the shore. It's impossible for teachers' students to get lost in the forest. Old Man Wu laughed heartily. A moment later, the wooden boat neared the shore. The woman in hunting attire gracefully leapt ashore, and the small boat moved forward, pulling apart the distance. Old Man Wu shouted, Let's go home and eat tonight. No need, someone's taking care of our meals. The woman in hunting attire waved her hand, turned around, and entered the forest, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Old Man Wu sat back on the boat and turned his head to look at the gear building on the opposite shore. He sighed and patted the side of the boat. Control the speed. Don't forget to take samples. In the span of a few days, the North Shore gear, which had burned quite a large area, had already more or less recovered from its exterior appearance. The overall feeling of having been scoured by time made it not require too much of an external appearance. The current project was mainly the installation and remodeling of the internal equipment. On the day of headquarters operation, the destruction caused by that damned tank had practically razed the central control room to the ground. When the Devil Ray had put out the fire, the water cannon it had released had also caused a large area of electrical circuit damage. All kinds of pipelines had to be buried anew. The construction workers and technicians were carrying equipment in and out. It was a scene of work in full swing. The bald crow flapped its wings to cushion its fall. It steadily landed on the railing of a viewing platform at the top of the building. From this position, it could see the figures of people entering and exiting the building. It could also see some areas inside the building through the glass. Inside the building, there was a construction worker pushing a high-precision imaging instrument. He openly walked around each floor of the building. From time to time, people would come over and input data obtained from other locations, continuously adjusting the parameters and establishing a database that might be even more detailed than the design blueprints. The scope and intensity of the construction workers' work, when converted to value, already far exceeded the remuneration they received from the school. Chapter 336. It was 9:15 in the morning. The second morning class of Acumen College had already begun. The surrounding schools were more or less the same. The students, who were the main consumers, were bound to the campus. The streets of the large living area were relatively deserted. There were only magnetic rails extending out at low altitudes. Flying cars streaked past from time to time. Acumen College was located in the Pingjiang district. It could compete for the throne of the lowest average building height in Xia City. Even though Cloud City Water Village had a super tall building complex in the center, it only made the surrounding environment seem shorter and flatter. The crow flapped its wings and skillfully streaked through the gaps between the surrounding buildings. It soon locked onto the entrance to an underground parking lot. Taking advantage of the pedestrians not noticing, it practically stuck to the top of the doorway and flew in. It twisted left and right, and soon arrived at the underground third floor. It found its final target amidst the hundreds of parked cars. Amidst the flapping of its wings, the crow landed on the roof of a commoner's SUV. Its jet-black claws lightly knocked, and the sunroof immediately opened, swallowing the crow inside. The car was filled with the aroma of beef. In the driver's seat, a robust middle-aged man held a bag of freshly baked roast beef. He directly stuffed a piece of maroon meat into his mouth. The enormous crow entered the car. When it retracted its wings, it smacked the man's head. He didn't even raise his head. He was very focused. The man's skin was red. This kind of skin color was quite common among Caucasians, but it felt a bit sickly on an Asian. He had a tuft of beard on his chin. It looked like an artist's beard, but it was placed on his face. It looked very crude. The crow sized up this person with curiosity. Then it stood in the front passenger seat. Its claws hooked onto the seat cushion. It stood quite steadily. Its enormous bird body already exceeded 70 centimeters. It stood in the front passenger seat, at about the same height as a normal person sitting. The man turned his head to look after swallowing most of the meat in his mouth. He met the crow's jet-black pupils and went, "Oh!" He freed a hand and rummaged through the storage box in the middle of the car. He took out a box and tilted the food packaging, pretending to pour it into the box. "Want to eat? If you want, I'll share some with you." This must be someone in the same trade. Otherwise, why would he treat a crow like this? This enormous crow was none other than Luo Nan's pet. It was also Luo Nan's earliest believer, Ink. Right now Luo Nan and Ink shared a view. He could control it, so Ink shook its head. "If you don't want to eat, then forget it." The man stuffed another piece of roasted beef into his mouth and chewed hard. Then, he reached out and grabbed a rubber band-like object from the center console. He put it on his index finger and shook it. It was obvious that the material was flexible and had a purplish-red luster. It was very eye-catching. "Lift your leg." Luo Nan was very cooperative. He sent the command to Ink, and Ink jumped a bit. It raised a claw crookedly. The man used 2 fingers to pull open the rubber band and wrapped it around Ink's shins. Immediately, he tightened the band against the skin. With the claws blocking the lower part, it wouldn't fall off. There was a purplish-red circle around Chimo's foot, which was also quite eye-catching. From what Ink could sense, it didn't seem to be affected at all. As the man chewed on the meat, he mumbled, "This gadget is specially made. It's a communication device. It's very simple to use, and it's more suitable for you psychics. You'll know once you try it." A communicator strapped to his leg? Luo Nan pierced it with his mental strength, but there was no response. Then he interfered with the material plane a bit, immediately triggering a mechanism. The rubber band trembled slightly, sending out a corresponding signal. "Hello, hello." There was no sound in the car. The middle-aged man in the driver's seat tapped his ears. "I hear you." So this was how it could be used. It was indeed quite convenient and effortless. Luo Nan reckoned that even if he didn't comprehend the coupling technique, he would still be able to realize external communication by relying on the paper-blowing interference power from before. Right now there was only one question. Luo Nan asked through the communication rubber band. "Isn't it a bit roundabout? You can use the hexa-ear, right?" Luo Nan still remembered the last time he and Crag Burst acted together. The two used the hexa-ear to communicate without hindrance on the psychic wave network. They were able to seamlessly connect to the society's large operation. Why did they need to open a new communication channel? That's your communication network. I can't reach it. In addition, your partner hasn't joined the society. That's all. Partner? Then you. Oh, what's your name, Master? My surname is Jean. Master Jean? Fourth tone. Good Yang Jean. You can just call me Old Jean. In any case, I'm just a driver. Luonan felt that this person was a bit emotional. Perhaps his situation was similar to worker Zhai's. He was a person within the circle, but he wasn't an awakened. It was normal for him to be a bit jealous. In any case, this person was a hired employee of the hidden indigo firm. Luonan didn't need to worry about his mental state. Zhang Yingying had played such a trick. She had Luonan hide behind the scenes, and had the spiritually attached crow do the reconnaissance. There was nothing to criticize in terms of safety, but when it came to doing things, there was always a bit of mystifying. Luonan needed the cooperation of a partner. Originally, Luonan believed that this straightforward driver before him would be his future partner. But from the tone of his voice, it seemed that it was someone else. Knocking sounds rang out from the car window as he was pondering. Old Jean unlocked the door, and someone opened the door to sit in the back. The person wore a brimmed hat, and the shadow covered half of his face. He was quite mysterious, and he leaned back just as he sat down. His body movements were quite relaxed. Old Jean, my partner. Oh, a 70-centimeter bald crow. He's a giant. The person in the back swept his gaze over Ink, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. He immediately let out a gasp of admiration. Normal bald crows were around 50 centimeters in length when they reached adulthood. Ink's physique far exceeded that. Just a search on the internet would reveal this. But this person was able to distinguish the species of crows with a single glance, and was well versed in the relevant knowledge. He should be an enthusiast or a professional. The person took off the brimmed hat as they spoke. Her black hair hung down like a waterfall, setting off a bright and beautiful face full of vitality. It seemed to brighten up the dusky car. Yes, this was a woman. She looked very young, around 20 years old. Her skin was a healthy wheat color. It wasn't dark, but it revealed a bright luster of life. To use a common saying, she was full of collagen, displaying an abundance of vitality. She casually tied her hair into a high ponytail. It could be seen that she was quite tall. When she straightened her back, her head nearly touched the roof of the car. And the hunting clothes on her body were tight, making her figure appear all the more curvaceous. Old Jean, I'm not late, right? Look at the speed of the car. Old Jean gave a simple reply. Then he poured the entire roast beef from the bag into his mouth. His cheeks bulged as he chewed with force. He knocked on the control panel, and the car started up in smart mode, driving out of the underground parking lot. Luonan was speechless at such a bold way of eating. The beautiful woman in the back seat extended her hand over at this time. Luonan instinctively felt that she wanted to shake his hand and greet him. He wanted to order Ink to extend its wings in response, but the crow's head had already been struck. Then it was rubbed left and right. This crow isn't bad. Oh, or should I say spirit bird lich or shikigami? Which one sounds better? Peony has brought along a communication device. You two can directly talk. Old Jean spoke vaguely, giving Luonan an introduction. Peony. Luonan touched the rubber band and gave it a try. Hi, Mr. Crow. Hello. Hello. In any case, Miss Peony, it would be even better if you could stop pressing on Ink's head. This giant is called Ink? That's easy to remember. It'll be easier to greet him in the future. Also, there's no need to add Miss. Peony is my nickname. Just call me directly. Then you can just call me Crow. According to Zhang Yingying's explanation, everyone participating in this operation didn't know his true identity, including his partner. Of course, this was another layer of insurance, so Luonan accepted it. Peony laughed. Her eyes were very beautiful, and the corners of her eyes were very long. There was a clear reclining silkworm under her eyes, and the color was bright and moist. When she laughed, her eyes would curve into exquisite crescent moons. It was very alluring. Okay, I'll leave Mr. to Ink. Mr. Ink sounds pretty good. Scratch. Ink's fuzzy self-awareness awakened when he heard someone say his name in succession. He opened his mouth to speak, but his voice was unavoidably hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. This means that you've agreed, right? At this time, the civilian SUV they were riding in had already cut into the high-speed magnetic rail. According to the driving route, they needed to take a detour from Cloud City Water Village to rise into the sky. Crow shot a glance at the skyscrapers that towered into the clouds in the distance as he changed lanes. He especially looked at Ocean Sky Cloud City, which was at the very front. He couldn't see the details of the building from his position, but waves of tourists had come over since a week ago. They especially loved the viewing platform on the 142nd floor of Ocean Sky Cloud City. They stayed for half a day or even a day at a time. Not only did they use the viewing binoculars on the platform, they also brought all sorts of equipment with them. They watched with great delight. This group of tourists formed an interesting contrast with some of the construction workers of gear. There were also many types of data and information exchanged between them. It could be said that they thoroughly researched gear from the inside out. What was even more interesting was that the origins of these people were quite complicated from the current intelligence. There were at least 4 or 5 groups of financial backers. There were conflicts between them, but there were also collaborations. They each showed off their schemes and played to their heart's content. But no matter how they fought openly and covertly, these people all had a clear goal. They were all observing and speculating. Was there a deeper secret in this building called gear? Could they do something about it? Therefore, Luo Nan understood that gear seemed quiet right now, but it had already sunk into a turbulent undercurrent. Moreover, it was sinking deeper and deeper. As for why it was like this, the reason was still unclear. The pressure. Nothing was said along the way. 15 minutes later, the car drove into another underground parking lot. This place belonged to a certain business hotel in the city district. This area was connected to the recycling stratum. When the car went down, a dispirited and deranged figure wandered about on the other side of the thick wall. His line of sight was unable to penetrate the car and the thick wall, but the area with a radius of 30 meters was within the range of Ink's perception. It transformed into a detailed scene that was reflected in Luo Nan's mind several dozen kilometers away. Under pure observation mode, whether it was Luo Nan himself or his believers, their mental strength could penetrate through walls. There was nothing it couldn't reach. The only thing that could be limited was the limited range that they could cover. A radius of 30 meters. This was the current limit of Ink's natural perception. However, Luo Nan could also use telekinesis and other methods to temporarily expand it by a large margin. Luo Nan compared the relevant information and felt that this kind of ability was already enough. The car stopped precisely at the center of the parking lot. The elevator was right in front of it. Old Jean smacked his lips. He had already swallowed his beef clean. Get off the car. There's nothing else for me to do. Chapter 337. Under Old Jin's urging, Peony got out of the car first and put on her wide-brimmed hat once more. She raised her hand and fiddled with the back of her head a couple of times. Her high, knotted ponytail pierced through the top of her hat's buckle and swayed slightly. It was lustrous, bright, and beautiful, yet also appeared lively and dynamic. Right now, Luo Nan could confirm that Peony's figure was quite tall. She had the absolute figure of a model. At first glance, she could compete with his older cousin Emoya. In other words, they were more than 180 centimeters tall. This put a lot of pressure on the youth, who was only about 170 centimeters tall. Fortunately, he didn't have to reveal it now. Ink jumped out from the side window, unfurled its wings, and with a slight turn flew forward. Luo Nan saw that the elevator had stopped on the ground floor. He pressed a button with his interference force in passing, and the elevator lights lit up. The doors opened just as Peony arrived. "Thank you, Mr. Ink." Peony smiled unhurriedly, but she thanked the wrong target. However, when she smiled, the silkworm under her eye sockets became even clearer, outlining the shape of a crescent moon. The bottom of her eyes seemed to be shrouded by a light mist, misty and indistinct, making her look even more charming. Amidst her smile, Peony walked into the elevator and extended her hand to lightly brush her shoulder. "Aren't you going to take a break?" Luo Nan didn't express his opinion. Ink made its own decision. Perhaps it felt that the elevator was too narrow, and that it couldn't spread its wings. So it simply landed on Peony's left shoulder. Wow, it's heavy. Be it from the perspective of species or the real world, Ink was indeed a big guy. At this moment, its 2 claws were hooked onto the shoulder of Peony's hunting clothes, and its wings were tucked in tightly. Otherwise, it would have forced Peony to tilt her head. The elevator went up and soon reached the 50th floor. There was a receptionist at the exit. When she saw Peony, especially the enormous crow on her shoulder, she stared blankly for a moment before coming forward to greet her. "Hello, are you Lady Peony of the Hidden Indigo firm?" Peony grunted. Her attitude was still quite adequate. When the receptionist's line of sight swept across Peony's pretty face, she was somewhat sluggish, but then her heart inexplicably chilled. He quickly attributed the reason to the crows. Let's not talk about whether the crow that occupied the shoulder of the beauty was majestic or not. Its posture was habitually leaning forward. Its height seemed fine, but its tail feathers and head formed a slanted line. It looked like someone was leaning forward and staring at you. The more one looked at it, the stranger its pitch-black eyes were. The receptionist couldn't help but take a step back. Realizing that she had lost her composure, she smiled awkwardly and took the opportunity to lean sideways. She gestured with her hand. "This way, please." Peony nodded and walked into the small conference room ahead. The room was about 40 square meters. The tables and chairs were arranged in an oval shape. The center was empty, and there was some equipment inside. At this time, the equipment was not turned on, but most of the chairs were already occupied. There were about 20 people. The appointed time was 9:30, and it was already 10:32. They were 2 minutes late, but the meeting hadn't started yet. It seemed like they weren't the only ones who were late. Seeing Peony come in with an enormous crow, everyone in the room turned their heads to size her up. Peony maintained her polite and distant smile. She withstood the gazes of everyone and directly found a place to sit down. She also brought out a curious gaze and swept it over the faces of everyone in the room. Her body language was very relaxed. Ink jumped down from her shoulder and stood on the table in front of her. Under Luo Nan's repeated warnings, Ink folded its wings and shut its mouth. It didn't utter a single sound, but its head twisted back and forth, and its eyeballs followed suit. The beauty and the crow shifted their gazes and switched their targets at the same time. One person and one bird were brazenly watching the other participants. In the end, it was these people, who held the advantage in numbers, who couldn't take it anymore. They diverted their gazes one after another. Some of the people in the room had wanted to get closer to the beauty and greet her. But when they saw this situation, they dispelled these thoughts one after another. The atmosphere was bewildered and awkward. And so, of the 20 or so people in the conference room, only Peony's expression didn't change from beginning to end. Luo Nan couldn't help but admire her. He had Ink as a cover, and he was several dozen kilometers away. He had no misgivings, and Peony's performance was clearly experienced. She was calm and composed, unyielding and imposing. I wonder what kind of work she does in the Hidden Indigo firm? Luo Nan discovered that he had been so busy these past few days that he was dizzy. He knew very little about his future partner. Right when he was pondering whether or not he should find Zhang Yingying and ask her for some information, the door rang out again. Another person entered the room. After a brief pause, the person walked straight over. The person simply pulled out a chair next to Peony. Only then did he bow and smile. "Can I sit here?" "Feel free." Peony turned her face to the side and roughly sized up the person. She didn't refuse. The person sat next to Peony. He was a young man wearing casual clothes. His semi-long curly hair was quite eye-catching. The ends of his hair hung down to his shoulders, and it was a bit fluffy. His complexion was extremely fair, and he wore an earring in the middle of his left ear. Luo Nan was certain that this bro's stylist was absolutely amazing. Not only did he not look like a sissy, he even used his hairstyle to further embellish the lines of his slightly mixed blood cheeks. This matched his healthy physique with wide shoulders and narrow waist. He had quite a manly air, and he had the style of an aristocrat from the old European royal families. After the person sat down, he first introduced himself. "Hello. My surname is Long. I'm ranked 7th. My friends call me Long 7. I just joined this group. I'll take the liberty to ask for your name. You can just call me Peony. Peony. Long Seven's gaze swept across Peony's cheeks. In the end, it landed on her wide-brimmed hat. I'm guessing that you're a student of Acumen College. Luo Nan was caught off guard. Only then did he discover that he had been overthinking things. From beginning to end, he had just been conversing with Peony. Peony didn't have any ill feelings toward this handsome mixed-blood kid. A smile blossomed from the corner of her eyes. She asked very cooperatively, "What's the reason?" Please forgive me for speaking bluntly. As an amateur team formed from students, Jungle Owl has just entered the main WCG tournament. They've only participated in the 10 days in the wilderness event. Their results are even more lackluster. The majority of their peripheral products will only be digested within Acumen College. Only now did Luo Nan notice that the wide-brimmed hat Peony was wearing had a logo in the shape of a nightingale on the front. Presumably, this was the logo of the so-called Jungle Owl. It can't be that bad. Jungle Owl's Pippi is very good-looking. He has a lot of fangirls both inside and outside the school. Peony's body leaned a bit more to the side. She propped an elbow on the table, and her fingertips pushed against the brim of the wide-brimmed hat. This careless action made the hat tilt a bit, but it gave her an even more carefree and casual air. Long Seven didn't say anything, but the eyeballs of the other participants who were sneaking glances at them nearly popped out. Next, Peony and Long Seven really did chat about topics related to esports. It was just that Long Seven was very familiar with the styles, members, and battle records of each team. Peony was more interested in the good-looking people of each team, regardless of gender. I really do care about good-looking people. Other people watch the live broadcast of fights, but I watch the highlights, interviews, and so on. Peony didn't hide her hobby at all. She giggled in extreme delight. Long Seven was just about to speak when he suddenly froze. Peony propped up her chin with one hand and extended the other under his startled gaze. Her slender fingers lightly brushed past the locks of hair at the side of Long Seven's temples. It seemed to even touch his skin. Of course, you're not bad either. The ambiguity level was off the charts. The thrill level was off the charts. The vast majority of people in the conference room were eavesdropping and peeking at the conversation between the handsome man and the beautiful woman. Some people were caught off guard by Peony's actions. They drew in a cold breath. There were also some people whose eyes lit up with raging flames. The reason for this was that grass had grown in their hearts. Long Seven instantly recovered from his astonishment. He instinctively reached out to grab Peony's probing fingers, but he was still half a step too late. Peony's slender hand noiselessly pulled back, but her thumb and forefinger were pinching a dazzling silver earring. It was the one on Long Seven's ear. Seeing the object on Peony's fingertips, Long Seven's complexion became grave for the first time since they met. "Miss Peony. Just call me Peony." Amidst this seemingly familiar conversation, Peony's posture didn't change. She merely pinched the earring and brought it closer to her eyes, sizing it up in detail. Later on, her fingers clearly exerted more force, but the earring that resembled a fine loop didn't react. Long Seven's complexion was heavy. Just as he was about to say something, the beauty in front of him extended her slender hand again and delivered it to his eyes. "It's a pretty good earring. Is it platinum?" Long Seven didn't answer Peony's question. In the first instant, he took back the earring and put it back on his ear. His taut face relaxed a little, but he could no longer return to his previous cheerful state. The atmosphere became increasingly strange. Ink sensed the change in the atmosphere. It subconsciously flapped its wings and even dropped a feather. Peony casually picked it up and giggled as she poked Ink's head. She minded her own business and played happily. It seemed that she didn't take Long Seven's change in attitude to heart in the slightest. What a self-centered woman. Just as Luo Nan made his initial judgment, another person walked into the conference room. He stood directly at the front of the oval conference table and swept his gaze across the conference room. He nodded and said, "Everyone's here. Let's start the meeting." The last person to enter had an elderly appearance. He was at least 70 years old, but his posture was ramrod straight. His self-introduction was full of energy, and his voice was sonorous. I am Wu Bin, the executive director of Trigate Corporation. I am also the person in charge of this project and the organizer of the team. I will be the one to coordinate the specific operations of the project for some time to come. There are 2 trustworthy professionals present here, and there are also the elites of the company. They all possess formidable strength. I believe that this maintenance operation will certainly achieve satisfactory results. Wu Bin's words were a bit bureaucratic, but this was in line with Trigate Corporation's judgment of having a military background. Wu Bin's words were inflexible, but this didn't mean that his brain was rigid. Wu Bin knew very well that this was the first time the experts he had invited were meeting with the members of the team. They needed to have an intuitive understanding. He took advantage of this opportunity to point at the subordinate beside him. We'll start with you. Make a self-introduction. The subordinate suddenly stood up. He was just about to speak when Peony raised her hand from the middle of the conference table. Her fingertips were still holding the inky and translucent blue crow feather. Director Wu, the hidden indigo firm hopes that you can explain the personnel composition of the operation team first. According to the contract signed between the firm and your esteemed company, we should be the sole professional instructors and commanders. 2 professionals? What do you mean by that? Her words silenced the pitiful subordinate. He could only look stupidly at Wu Bin. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.